intro or something?
Yeah, I'm working on it. Literally, this is the first episode.
Okay, so I'm honored then.
Yeah. So this is roughly going to be named the Frank Experience, where basically I just have conversations with people. We talk about their passions, their experiences, and their business if they have one. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's obviously a growth in progress. It's funny because this morning I was because I you have these habits where or not habits you have these situations where you're trying to do something that you've been meaning to do for a long time, and then I kid you not, I kept saying I'm going to do something, and it wasn't until I actually just did it, and I figured, okay, so I can't do a podcast without people to talk to, right? Because when I did the podcast before, literally it was called The Vision Unknown. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. I just had a couple friends, and we just kind of chatted about random stuff, but like this feels more natural to me. Like I know I love talking to people about business. I love talking to people about like my passions and things that I enjoy, like coding or video or film or whatever I get into. And I love having those conversations. So I was like, well, why don't I just talk to people about that? Like I love business. I'm not an expert. But at the same time, like I love having those discussions, and there's the things that I'm really passionate about, like teaching, like finding holes in companies' education platform,
There are
like
plenty of holes and companies to find out.
yeah, well, just because they're coming from a place of what's efficient for them, and that's fine, but then they don't realize there's no neurological or psychological basis on what they're doing, so nothing sticks. In addition, you're dealing with people that come from all different backgrounds, and they're all different types of people. So I think the focus should be more on building proper habits.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a book I'm reading called Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's a
I
great
actually
book.
have it.
It's a great, right? It's a great book.
Yep. I mean, right now above my camera, I have like at least 5 books on this topic.
I mean, and you'll have to excuse the drinks with the mic being sensitive. We'll try not to take too many sips of coffee, but we all need that. So first, I want to say thank you for coming on. You're from where?
I'm born and raised in Bulgaria, but right now I'm living in Germany.
And what time is it over there?
It's 5:30 in the afternoon right now. And actually, just one interesting thing. I don't know if you know what date it is today. It's the day that the Berlin Wall fell, and it's kind of cool. Like the West meets the East.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
That's nuts. I had no idea, dude. That's
yeah.
amazing.
It's a national holiday here in Germany, so people are celebrating this reunification of Germany and how.
That is amazing, man. That's a cool day to have a podcast, dude. That's amazing. And that can get me down a lot of cool things to talk about, because for me, one of the main reasons why I wanted to also start the podcast was because I wanted to have conversations with people of different perspectives, different beliefs, different things, just all around. Like I'm a huge fan of Joe Rogan, and that's where I kind of got the idea. And I love talking, and I thought, when I tried to make YouTube videos, the struggle is you make YouTube videos, but it's hard to make YouTube videos primarily because like the way
You're
the
talking to
algorithm.
yourself.
Yeah, and well, I think it's has a lot to do with self-awareness. So once I realized that I can still have a place to talk, then now I'm starting to lean more towards, oh, well, I can still make YouTube videos. I just have to structure them in a way that I'm giving content in a way that's valuable but digestible and fun to watch. You know what I mean? So I'm learning a lot. But anyway, so what I'd like to ask is, we kind of met through the Video Warriors. And I wanted to ask, like, what's been your experience with that? What's been your experience with video? Like, how'd you get into it?
I mean, I've always wanted to start a YouTube channel for myself because I've managed previously a lot of YouTube channels and edited some videos and so on for other people. In general, this journey into the creative things started with managing social media profiles.
Mm-hmm.
And I was relying heavily at the beginning on other people to edit videos, create photography, and so on. And I slowly started getting into photography, recording videos, editing videos, and at some point I just ended up in Germany completely alone. My wife was still back in Bulgaria for the first year till I settle in and make all the arrangements here. And I was like, okay, I have plenty of time. I have a big topic that because I'm learning a lot of new stuff. When you move to a new country, there's so many things that you cannot think of that you need to learn, that you've taken for granted in your own country, like where to go if you have this problem, how to register as a freelancer, how to file your tax return declaration, and so on. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna make videos about it. I'm pretty sure this is gonna be helpful for a lot of people. But yeah, I mean, at some point I decided that it's like niching down is not for me. I don't like to like stick to one topic only. So I just branch out into talking about photography, freelancing, business, investments as well. All of the things that are actually in a person's life. It's not like just one topic. People are interested in multiple topics, and people can offer info for more than one topic.
Yeah, and I definitely agree. And I think so. A buddy of mine, he does a YouTube channel. His name is Metal for Breakfast. I know that sounds. It was when I first heard it, I was like, "What?" And that's crazy because I was like, "Well, I'm definitely gonna remember that." And it was him, and it's surprising the amount of conversations you might have on Twitter. And I found that to be a platform where I can actually have more interaction with people you wouldn't normally on like YouTube and other platforms. Well, because like, obviously it's opportunistic, right? So you have to like catch people like the times they're actually using their phone and on Twitter because, people respond. But what I try to do is I try to engage with people. I'll still reply to people that have like a lot of replies, but I try to be realistic. Like they're not going to they may like it, you know what I mean? Which happens with most people that have like a lot of comments, most YouTubers that have like a lot of people that actually interact with their Twitter. It's just, setting those expectations for myself. But Roberto Blake is somebody I followed, and he's been really engaging as well.
Yeah, he's really active, I think, everywhere.
Yeah, he's a great guy. I would love to have him on the podcast someday. But so with Metal for Breakfast, he did on his YouTube channel. He did a lot of comedic, like how people do like clone skits where it's themselves, but it's like multiple people. So he's done a lot of that, but it really dragged him out. He really got like kind of burnt out, and then he jumped onto TikTok and he blew up there because people love funny short clips. And so, but then he tried to come back to YouTube and he's like, man, there's all these things that I want to do, but will you watch my video if it's not the content that I'm normally putting out, but I want to do other stuff. And so he really just kind of had an honest video feedback type of thing. And he just said, and I kind of agree with this, where he's like, variety content is coming back. And
it is, but YouTube is still not supporting that, sadly.
They're not, but the problem is, I think once people realize that, like, because it's all about the algorithm's going to respond to us, if we're being honest. It's really about like, so, and I guess, and I do believe that whether it's like in this data or not, I believe it. It's like how tags don't matter. Like people have actually done tests where they take the tags entirely out of their video and the video views don't go down. So
I mean, I can tell you this as a tester perspective because
sure.
That's my everyday job. I'm a software tester in the automotive industry, but I've tested other software as well, and I've done tons of experiments with YouTube. And I can tell you that they're trying to push their own agenda, like what the platform should be, and try to teach the users how to use it. And for me personally, that's the wrong approach because they're pushing away users. Personally, as a user of YouTube the last year, I've been super unsatisfied. For example, I watched 3 videos about the new NVIDIA graphic cards. now my entire feed is full of videos for this card. I mean, dude, I got enough information about it. I don't need any more. The algorithm is big time screwed up right now.
Yeah. I've noticed that. Like if I watch any type of, because I've been getting into, you know how people make those YouTube videos where it's just music, like chill music, stuff like that. So I'll
Yep.
watch some of those, and then I'll get tons of them. But the problem with that is you'll get people that just decide to use like attractive females, and they'll use attractive female photos, and then I'll get a bunch of those, and then my wife, she's gonna be like, "What are you watching?" I'm like, I'm listening to music. I mean, it's good
Yeah,
music.
I'm guilty. I'm guilty of that. I've been because I have a channel for no copyright music and sound effects and so on. And for some of the tracks, I've been putting some attractive women as covers.
It's hard though because you got to feed the algorithm, right? People are going to click on it. So I mean, the variety content though. I mean, you obviously you might know a little bit more on that side. I feel from a energy perspective, I think if people start communicating to their audiences that they want to do more variety content, that's great. There are channels though where that's all they do and they're fine. Like it's that's their daily job. Like they do, like I'm actually thinking about doing a channel dedicated to just coding, but I'm gonna start inserting coding videos into my channel and just see how it does. If it does great, then I'm gonna do another channel. That's just where I post like the coding stuff. Because I'm also writing an app called Keep, where it's just a recipe app. It was an idea that I had, and it's just a project now. My iOS developer was working with me for a while. It was just he just wanted to help out for for his own portfolio, and that was great. But then obviously it got to the point where COVID happened. He lost his job. Then he was working with me kind of full time just to kind of do something and continue building the portfolio. We got it published. He got a job, and now he's starting to kind of pull back, which is fine. Obviously, it was free work, and that's great. But I still want to finish the project, and so I'll be basically handling all of that. But I've learned a lot about the Kotlin language that I'm going through, and like I'm realizing that when you go into the Kotlin videos on YouTube, there's not a lot that go into the detail that I need. And normally it's a lot of people that their audio is not great or there's no audio. So I'm thinking of
or you find a video that the title is in English and then you open it and someone is speaking in God knows what language.
Yeah, Hindu or whatever language. Yeah, and so that's something where I'm like, I could probably add some value to that because Kotlin is relatively new. People are still coding in it, but I think I can put a different spin. So that's why I was looking into that. But the variety content, though, I really do think that it's important because I'm all over the place. Like I love Iron Man, as you can see behind me. I enjoy the Marvel Universe. I might want to have conversations about that. But then I'm like, because I actually did try to make an Iron Man YouTube channel all about Iron Man, and then I just stopped.
I mean, that's the point about certain topics. There is no topic that's endless.
Yeah, and that's true.
Sooner or later, you're gonna run out of things to talk about, and you're gonna do it like most big YouTubers right now. It's like the same topic, but with 2020 at the end.
Pretty much, and well, and that can be relative to an extent because I know for a fact, for example, with software, and you're a software tester, so you understand this. Like things always change. So in that respect, like eBay resellers, right? I've been doing eBay a little bit to make some extra scratch, and I found that what's going on now isn't what was happening 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and people that have been in the game for a while, they have content, and so they have to update it for what's out right now because things have changed.
Just imagine how much changes per year. Can you produce enough content for YouTube to feed the hungry algorithm?
That's true. I mean, people do it, and then you build. I feel like that's so. In my perspective, eventually people catch enough individuals that create a community, and that community just ends up attracting more people that are like-minded individuals, and so they just keep up on the channel. And that's kind of what I do. But if we can talk about one thing about YouTube, and then we'll move on to like the business stuff because I'm curious about that. So on YouTube, what I found to be completely useless, maybe it's useful in YouTube's behind the scenes, but it's been useless to use the notification bell. The reason why I say that is because I have thousands of subscriptions. I literally have to go and clear my notifications because it's like you have over 500, over 900 notifications. I'm like, yeah, because I have notifications for videos that I don't care, don't want to watch right now. And I've even gotten to the point to where as a software developer, because YouTube is an RSS feed, and I'm thinking to myself, what if you could just make an app where every time you subscribe, the app would basically, you could take the subscriptions that you have, put them in groups, and say, I want notifications of these groups. I don't want notifications of individual channels. You know what I mean? Or just customize it in the whatever way you want to where, like, I want to turn all channels off. I just want notifications about this channel.
I mean, they do have some groups, but they're not customizable. Like you can say, I want notifications only for tech channels, for example, or something like that.
I didn't know that. So, but that's the kind of cool thing about software is like when the platform, which is, I think it's funny when platforms, when they develop a feature, like Apple, for example, they're notorious for this. They'll develop stuff in their software or their hardware where it's or primary software where it's not enough. Like their options or customizations just they're not enough, and then they leave room for third-party people to come in and make
I mean, for Apple, I understand
yeah.
that. Like they can leave out features and say, okay, we are going to roll out almost the same hardware next year, but we are going to bring a new iOS version, and it's going to have these features, and it's going to be, for example, supported only on this hardware, so they can sell more hardware. That I understand, but for example, for social media platforms, I don't understand why they are keeping back features or not implementing good ones in general when they're not selling anything and there's in a constant battle for the attention of people.
Yeah.
Like if someone comes up with a hybrid between Facebook and YouTube, that's going to be the killer social media platform.
I don't know if that would work really well because I feel like, well, I know the tough thing with Facebook is even when they started doing video as like a thing, you know?
Yeah, that's the problem on the phone of Facebook. They don't handle video pretty well. But then again, it's way more social than YouTube is.
That's true. And you already have the platform of Facebook behind the videos. But the thing that kind of annoys me with Facebook is we have these advertisements and now there's no option to turn them off. So that's the one thing that's been bothering me because like when I watch a video on Facebook, which is why I don't try, I'll watch funny videos and then I don't care about the advertisements. But when I'm watching a video I actually want to watch, it's annoying because you'll get an advertisement in a part of the video that is it just breaks your focus. You're just trying to watch it or whatever, and then you get this weird ad that's not like it doesn't make any sense that you got.
I mean, I think that's like a strategy just to attract bigger creators to the Facebook platform. That's like, hey, people cannot skip our commercials here, so you get more money on Facebook. Blah blah.
That's true. But anyways, yeah, I've noticed that those ads are kind of bothersome. There's not because I can see eventually, and to be honest, if you know about the iOS 14 update, Facebook's advertising revenue is going to be going down a lot because people are going to opt out of being tracked. Did you know about that?
I mean, I know that Facebook is tracking a lot, so.
Yeah, well, I'm just talking about the iOS 14 feature. Like it's really crazy because I could see Facebook actually doing a paid version just to turn off ads. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Because they've talked about Facebook always being free. Mm-hmm. But if I had an option to just turn off the ads, I may. But at the same time, do I want to be tracked? I don't know. It's a tough.
There is the simple solution. Just install an ad blocker on your. I don't know. Actually, are there ad blockers for Apple?
There is, but the problem with that is like with the constant change in software, like it could work and then it doesn't work. The thing that I've noticed, and I know this from experience because I had for a long time I really enjoyed the CW TV shows, and I would watch like The Flash and all those shows, and I didn't want I didn't want any ads. So my Chrome browser has extensions that block all ads. Like it doesn't do anything but just go to the next section of the episode. It's only Hulu that will detect it every once in a while, but more likely than not, it blocks everything, which is great. But I don't have a version on mobile, simply
Yeah, on
because
mobile, yeah, it's hard.
yeah, it's hard because the platform is definitely different. But let's talk about business, man. So you're a freelancer. So how did you get into it? Like, did you have a regular job before you were a freelancer? How'd you get into it? Did you have problems with like, figuring out the business aspects? Like, well, how do I do this? How do I actually start a business? Do I
So it's
need
a
to
bit
have?
complicated on my side.
Yeah.
I used to do a lot of freelancing back when I was in Bulgaria, but since I moved to Germany, all the freelance stuff was a bit on hold because most of the work I did was involving directly working with people, and when you don't speak the language, it's a bit hard to find clients. And
In Germany or Bulgaria?
in Germany, in Germany.
Okay.
I mean, I came here because of my daily job in the automotive industry, and I was working completely in English. I didn't knew a single word in German, so yeah, that's also one of the reasons why I turned to YouTube. Is like, okay, this may be an alternative for the creative side hustle, so to say. But yeah, right now I'm actually digging into the laws and all of that, how to register as a freelancer. It's not that complicated. I mean, there are some weird stuff that I didn't expect that I have to do. Like you have different people for the different taxes. For example, if you have a normal job with a contract, you have to go to one person to handle your taxes. If you're freelancing, you have to go to another one. And then
Mm.
that's a bit weird for me, but I mean something I should handle.
That's interesting though because we don't like and I'm extremely green when it comes to this. Like I've started one company, but I like to admit that like I played business. I didn't run a business. I played business. I got an LLC for Iron Digital Media, and well, I did. When I say I played business, like I played because I didn't have cash flow. That's the thing. So I did two wedding videos. That one of them I was supposed to be paid. I basically got paid like a quarter. And then I learned the hard lesson of contracts. But then I would
Oh yeah.
realize if I do a contract and the person doesn't pay up, is it worth it for me to go to court with the associated fees and just time invested for me to go to court because this person didn't pay me? You know what I mean? So I'm like, oh, geez, man. Maybe if
That's a
I had
benefit here in Germany. We have insurances for everything, including attorney and so on.
insurances, what do you mean?
I just pay like 30 euros per month, and I'm insured. Whenever I need an attorney, I just go in, give him my insurance number, and he gets paid from there.
Oh, that's cool. So if somebody doesn't pay you, you go that route?
That should be the case. I mean, I still haven't set up everything completely here in Germany because I don't know. It's like been 7, 8 months since I feel comfortable speaking with people in German.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Then
bet.
I mean, I was about to set up everything. I found an agency that I could work with and all of that, and then the Corona situation came and screwed up everything.
Oh man, it screwed up everything for everybody for sure. But so if I might ask, like that's a different topic in all itself. So how's been your experience with COVID? How has it impacted your business? And how are you and your family doing?
I mean, my daily job is still going. We have tons of work. We actually have more work than before because there is this short work situation in Germany where some of the people work less that are not so important, so to say, like in our company, the IT. That also leads to other problems in other departments which are important, like when we have some technical issues and we have to wait for the ITs to come back to work next week. This is putting us on hold, so we have tons of work. Financially, I didn't feel anything because I mean, me and my wife continued working throughout the entire thing. regarding the side business, as I said, it killed it completely. I was just at the beginning setting everything up, and it just killed it even before it was born, so to say.
That sucks. And then you got those people that are like, that's all they were doing, and maybe they had like cash flow positive and they were making good money, and then that happened and they don't have anything. So that definitely can be. And then so the lesson that I've learned, at least the one that I will take away from COVID, is budget for there to be no business. Excuse me.
Yep.
And just budget for, not just that, but like, I'm not saying a rainy day fund, because for me, saving, because when I grew up, saving, I was being told to save, because I've read books about finance. There's a guy named Robert Kiyosaki, and his book.
I think we've had a chat about one of his books somewhere on Facebook.
Yeah. I'm shooting a blank, obviously, because we're both on the spot here. So cash flow. It was Cash Flow Quadrant was the second book, and then what was his other one?
Poor Dad, Rich Dad.
Yeah, thank you. Poor Dad, Rich Dad was the other one, and thank you. There you go, everybody, check it out. It's a great book, honestly. Rich Dad, Poor Dad by itself will help you learn about assets and liabilities and just have a different perspective on business. But then the second book, which he declares to be technically the second one, I guess, is Cash Flow Quadrant. And that dives deeper into the business aspect and the different quadrants of, where you're an employee, you're a specialist, and then a business owner, and then an investor. So I think
so he introduces a new quadrant, because as far as I remember, in the first ones he introduced like those quadrants for the income and expenses and so on.
Right, and that's correct. And it also, when in Rich Dad Poor Dad, he dives into, like you mentioned, the budgets and just kind of, he makes it so simple to understand what should come in, what should go out, and how the assets and liabilities, how that looks in a regular person's like income flow. And it painted a different picture for me, which is why now my wife and I are on this like debt killing journey. And I was doing videos on it.
I mean, by default, you people in America are like really screwed up from this perspective. You finish university and you're like thousands of dollars in debt. That's something I cannot imagine having in my life.
Yeah, it's crazy, and that's what I'm working on right now is my student loan debt. But the crazy thing about that is I chose not to finish my degree. And the reason for that was I was married at the time. Like we were planning the wedding. And because we were planning the wedding, it was a lot like between like moving, it was a lot to continue school just at that time, because it's not like you can take time off of school. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to halt the degree, and then I was like, okay, well, I'll go back to it later. And I just never did. And then that company that I was with let me go. And I was like, well, that stinks. But then I started looking more into like, why do I need a degree, right? What does a degree help me with? What does it provide me? What value does it give, except for a lot of debt and the material that you learn? I'm not saying college doesn't give you experiences. It doesn't give you knowledge. I'm not saying that. What I am pertaining to is it depends on which direction people want to go. Like if they're comfortable and all they want to do is go to work, go home, hang out with their family and friends, take vacation and be done with it, then that's great. I mean, go down that route. I mean, if that's comfortable. And I think that's the biggest important thing is people need to learn so much about themselves that they know enough to make a decision whether they want to be a business owner or they just want to get a job somewhere because that's their comfort zone. And that's cool. It's just when people want more, they're expecting more out of their employers. They're expecting more, where they need to provide more for themselves in a different avenue, like a side hustle or something like that. And so for me, when I got into learning about that in college, like I got maybe too into the deep about not wanting a college degree anymore. But what I realized was, like, if you want to be an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer, those things require degrees.
As an engineer, I have to say no here. I have a
Okay.
master's in engineering, and I was working in parallel while actually studying. And all of my projects were related to engineering. All of my jobs during this period, and I can say I learned a lot more by working than what I've learned in university. Like universities right now are always at least a step back, and that's the top universities. If you go to something that's less than a top university, you're 10, 15 years backwards from the business. So you're not going to learn the technologies and know-how that you need. You might get some basic knowledge for what it was like 10, 20 years ago or at the beginning, but that's it. To be fair, if the situation wasn't like this in the whole of Europe, that you actually need a degree to get a good engineering job and so on, unlike, for example, with Tesla, where if you're good, they're gonna hire you. If it wasn't like that, I would have just worked and get certificates for this, that, and so on.
Yeah, and I would agree. And that on that topic with Tesla, like I agree wholeheartedly with his perspective. The CEO of IBM even said the same. Like, I'd like to take a snippet from a movie called Hidden Figures. It's about these women, these African American ladies who were working in NASA, and they're super smart, super brilliant women, and they, because during that time it was, civil rights movement, all that kind of stuff, and like I got pissed at that movie with my wife. We loved the movie, but I was visibly mad on their behalf at some of the ways they were treated, and it was garbage. But the moments that were triumphant, like for example, her manager, the guy above everybody in the movie, when she was working as a computer technically, um, when he found out that she would be gone for 40 minutes a day, he was pissed, thinking like, I stuck my neck out for you. Like, what are you doing? And she's like, and she got lit. She was mad. Because she let it out. She was like, I gotta go all this other way, like across campus, just to take a piss. And then like, she had to have her own coffee pot. It was really dumb stuff. Like just dumb stuff. Like germs are not, they don't care what color you are. Germs are gonna be on any surface, any person. Anyways, so so the movie itself, like it if you watch it, like they had to like go to through college, but a lot, like she was relearning. She would go back and grab books, and that brings me back to the whole like learning on the job, and why I think apprenticeships are very important, and I think they need to come back in full force. And I don't know if different countries maybe have that already in place, but in
That
America.
it's actually a lot popular here in Germany. Like a lot of people are going to this apprenticeship stuff and not going to a university when it comes to something technical, for example.
And it's not a huge deal there too, because universities aren't pressured for profit, so it doesn't matter to them, right?
Actually, the universities here are completely free in Germany.
Right. So they're not like profit driven, which means it doesn't matter if people go or not.
Yep.
Everybody's going to get a fair salary and all that kind of stuff. So they're
I mean,
not
it's still
pressured.
going to be a lot less than what you would get if you have an engineering degree.
What do you mean?
That, for example, if you go to this apprenticeship things, you become like a technician. That's the actual term that they use here in Germany. It's like you're a technician in this field, and then you have the engineers. And with this technician diploma, you can get until a certain level. Then you cannot advance further. Even if you're working on the same position as an engineer, the engineer is going to get paid more.
Yeah, and rightly so, of course. And they have to, what process do they have to go to become an engineer?
I mean, you go to the university for 4 years bachelor, then 2 years master, and yeah, you're done.
So you have to have a master's to be an engineer?
Uh, sort of. I don't know. It's a bit weird. Like the German school system is so crazy. I still cannot understand it after 4 years, but also I don't have to because I'm all past that. So
Right, 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 right. But on the note, back to what you're saying about how you learn more on the job. Like, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Sometimes I feel like the structure of interviews need to change too, at least here in America, because they're literally taking from the same playbook as any HR department ever. And it's becoming really annoying and to the point to where I've actually pushed back in interviews and asked them questions and like put them on the spot, because not because I'm trying to be malicious. It's really just because it's like, listen, it's just as important for me to interview. You're interviewing me. But in addition, it's also important for you to like know more about the company, like ask them challenging questions, like just so you can understand what they're about. But also, I really think, because I thought about this, if I owned my own company, how would I interview people? And my first thought was, I'm going to take them out for a beer. Like, we're going to go get a beer. We're going to have a good time. But I think and I know that's not the case with everybody, not everybody drinks, whatever, but the main focus is you take the person to have a good time. You put them in a relaxing situation. You kind of get them relaxed to where you can kind of see who they are. Are they a good person? Are they a bad person? You just do things that that you would normally do with other people. That would be sort of the test of, their character. And I think that's the most important thing, is you're supposed to be testing people's, because the thing that bothers me the most about the way that the job market is, no matter where you are, we're all humans just trying to make it in life. So we're not perfect, and we have certain views and perspectives, and we have passions and hobbies and families and all that. The fact that jobs or companies don't take that in consideration, and you have these executives high up here that are just, they don't think about that. They're just like profits and money and all that stuff, and that's fine. But I think companies that care more about that, those are going to be the ones that last a lot longer, because you're caring about the people. Like, actually, I've read, I didn't get to finish the book, but Richard Branson, he
Yep.
has a book called The Virgin Way.
Mm-hmm.
And in it, he talks about how he handled his companies and how he handled issues. He had a guy that stole from him in the records, and he had a record company in Europe, and he was stealing records and selling them to disc jockeys. And Richard found out, and he had him in. They had a conversation. He was forgiven, but he was given a second chance. And now he's one of their most, I don't know about now, obviously, but when I was reading the book, he's one of the most top producing employees now. And I think that has a lot to do with just getting to know people and understanding who they are, and not, because I know you have to have the separate of like business life and like this is work and this is home. I understand that. But at the same time, it's like, what's the whole point of getting to know somebody if you're not going to be a part of their life in some way, shape, or
There is no distinguishment between work and home when it comes to mentality. Because I do a lot of interviews, especially during this last 1 year for my team, because I'm actually managing the tests and I need new testers constantly and so on.
Oh, interesting. Tell me.
And I mean, I read through the CVs. Okay, you can basically write whatever the hell you want. And what's really important for me when I interview a person is to see how he's thinking. If the right mentality is there, if it's like, do I want to do just what says in my job description, just sit down and type something and code something or whatever, or am I open to learn new things, to experiment, to stand out and propose something? Like, if I don't know something, will I come to you and say, hey, I don't know this, I need a training, or I need a week so I can teach it myself, and stuff like that. That's way more important to me than someone coming with 20 years of experience and a 10-page list of all of the skills and so on. Of course, I mean, the experience is important, but not so important as having the right mentality. So if you learn fast and you have the motivation, you do much better at the end than someone with a lot of experience that has no willingness to work anymore. He's just there for the paycheck.
Yeah, I agree. And it sucks too, because there is still a place for people like that. It's just, are they stuck in their mentality to the point to where they won't adjust, or they're because like I can agree, and the mentality is super important. That's kind of where I was getting at with the interviews too, is like you're getting to know their character, you're getting to know their thought process, how do they think, and that's kind of what I do at my job, because they opened the floodgates for me when I started a new job recently, for me to give feedback. I didn't know their entire system yet, so it was difficult for me to give pretty valid feedback from a place of understanding everything in their systems of basically the perspective of my job. And so I've realized,
Hey,
like,
that's feedback as well. If
true,
something
and
is complicated, that's feedback.
that's true. And it was funny because he was like, we asked for feedback before and nobody gave it, and you're giving it. So, and he was like, yeah, most of this is trash. And I'm like, that's fine. It's just coming from a place of somebody who doesn't understand. And so after my 90 days, because we have this thing in America where we do 90-day temporary periods of, we both basically are checking the job out, basically.
In Germany, 3 and 6 months.
Oh, okay. And that's another thing too. People don't actually, they're not, the more experienced people that know how to evaluate a company are looking that way, but it's not encouraged enough to help people understand that you can evaluate a company in the 90 days just as much as they're evaluating you. Like, not in a condescending way, but it's like, here are the things that I had happen. Here's what I thought was working great, and here's what I thought didn't work so great. Here's my perspective. But the problem that I noticed with a lot of companies is they'll get in a place where either they're super great about just clarifying whatever you may not understand, or they're just in a place where we already told you you should know that. And that's super condescending because
that actually can lead to burnout.
yeah, well, because like when, for example, in the first week, they were telling me all the time how they told me this and that. And I'm like, listen, I'm absorbing a lot of information and I'm trying to keep up with everything. But basically, I just need to get to work. I need to do my job, and then I'll have questions. And that's the best way that I learn. You can expose me, you can have me shadow people. That's great. That will be helpful to me. But if I'm not doing it, I'm not going to learn. It's not going to stick in my brain. And
this is what I'm talking about, mentality. See, you have the
right.
right mentality. You want to get working. You're eager to learn it by doing it, and it doesn't matter what they give you to do. You sit down and figure it out and do it at the end.
Right. And then, because I'm an analytical person, and that's hard because I'll say a lot and I'll do a lot, but I've come to make better habits. Like, for example, when I'm working on something and it doesn't make sense, I'll have a flood of thoughts that will come in, and I'm thinking, like, is that valuable? Should I express this? Should I express that? Should I say this or say that? And sometimes you'll overwhelm people with too much. Not that it's good or bad. It could be all good information, but the other person is going to receive it a certain way. And so for me, I've had to learn a hard lesson of, is this valuable for me to say something? Or even sometimes we inadvertently do this, and I've learned this is actually psychological. Like, humans in general do this. We find the easiest, most comfortable way to do things, and we don't like to veer towards hard and difficult. And I've had to push myself towards the hard and difficult because otherwise I'm relying on other people when I know I could figure it out. And that's where I get back to the whole, like, it's important to teach habits, not like stringent 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps, because the habits help people, like, think differently. And so I've changed. So basically, when I go to do something, I stop myself. For example, before I just scream, I need help, I go, hold on, what resources do I have to find the answer? Can I find the answer? Also, remembering that this environment is different from every other job, where if I can find a solution, it doesn't matter where I find the solution. If I can find one, I can use it. Where some companies, they don't. They want you to use their procedures, their steps, and they're pretty strict on that. And that's
been there, done that. I was actually working for a really famous company here in Germany. I'm not gonna mention it because it wasn't so good, but it's like a really big company, and I felt like I was just like a number in an Excel sheet there. I introduced a lot of things that we could implement that were new and gonna be more efficient, and we're gonna save time, money, and so on. They just brushed it off and said, "Hey, that's not gonna happen." And I don't know. After 5, 6 months, we said our goodbyes.
Yeah.
And right now, I'm in a much smaller company where basically I have access to the vice president of the R&D department. He's just like 2, 3 levels above me. And it's much better because I have an idea. I just directly discuss it with my boss, and then okay, he says that's cool. Let's have a meeting with the vice president. Bam.
Yeah, that's actually the exact environment that I have. My lead is accessible, my manager's accessible, but I'm starting to realize when he'll push back on me is more of like, hey, get this with your lead first, before you guys bring it to my attention, or maybe he doesn't need to have it, in his attention at all, just because it's just not necessary. Like you do different roles have different, they have different volumes of things that come in. So certain things, and that's where like learning the right habits is important too, because like I had to do a lot of work on myself because again, I would try to find that comfort zone or I would lean too much into it. And that's where I like really try to help myself remember, like I got to stay uncomfortable. Otherwise I'm not going to get into a place where
I
I can be in control.
I understand you because I mean, for the past 4 years, I've been pretty much out of my comfort zone
Yeah.
completely. But then again comes also the point, knowing that you need to stay out of your comfort zone to have some kind of progress and so on is good, but you need to also know when to get back into your comfort zone, when you need rest before you burn out. Because I actually had 2 burnouts since I'm in Germany. One was smaller, one was bigger, but the second one was terrible. And that's because I was always pedal to the metal, like going forward, like get out there and so on. No rest at all for a couple of years, and then I just crashed.
Yeah. I don't think I've experienced burnout. I think what's happened to me, to talk about what like earlier this year when so I didn't get fired from the job I was at earlier this year. I quit. I quit because the environment was terrible. Like you had mentioned, like we said our goodbyes. Like the environment was so bad that they would change things, and you had just been trained on one thing, and then they change it to another. And then, like, if you're a minute late, like they watch the minutes, and you get in trouble for that. And I just think that's really unnecessary. We're human beings. Like, there's so much that goes on. Just going to the bathroom, like, that was a problem because you only had 2 breaks during the day. This was a inbound call center for the Veterans Affairs here in the States.
It's always like that with call centers. I used to work in a call center in Bulgaria, and it was exactly the same. I don't know.
Yeah,
It might be just a call center thing because in other companies, even American ones, I didn't have this problem.
yeah, like it's crazy. And what's funny is just like telephone operators, remember how if you ever pay attention to like history channels or like anyways, how telephone operators you used to actually switch calls. They
Hmm.
used to physically, with the 4th-inch cables, but that whole industry got phased out because there was a way to automate that. So with call centers, I do feel that there's going to be way less calls because the majority of it has a lot to do with stuff that can be automated. And I've already talked with people that are working with Google AI. Like call center jobs are going to be automated in the next 5 to 10 years because
I'm not a big fan of that. We do have a lot of automation from call centers here in Germany because actually supporting a call center here in Germany is expensive as hell, and a lot of companies are trying to minimize that cost. And this leads to a lot of problems because, for example, when people like me who are have technical background and so on have a technical issue, that means we need to speak with a higher level specialist. I
right.
don't need a freaking automated voice machine on the other side.
Yeah.
I know how to Google. I know how to find the questions and answers on their website and so on. I need detailed help.
Yeah, no, that's important too. And I think
Maybe level one will be cut out. Level one support will be cut out, and you have only level two directly.
right. And so I guess what I can refer to something that I'm aware of is, for example, there's just a lot of things that people call in for that can be done either on the website. Like, for example, cell phone carriers, right? So
Mhm.
there's a majority of stuff that I just don't need to call in for. All the stuff they're going to offer me on the phone, they need to stop having that just being offers that are given when you're on the phone. They need to have that stuff be offered on the website when you log in. You know what I mean? If you have an issue, for example, if you cancel a subscription, right, for any
Mhm.
company, they'll walk you through a process, a flow where eventually you're going to get a discount as an offer
I know,
to.
I do this every time.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, actually, no joke. For my internet service provider, I was pissed because I'm just not a fan of every year they double my price. I'm just not a fan of that. I'm like, don't do a deal. Just do something that makes sense. I don't understand why you're going to reward me as a customer for staying with you for a whole year. You're like, we're going to double your price. That doesn't make any sense.
Right now, I have the most insane mobile plan ever. So it costs twice as less as the next one that I had to pay, which had like 40 gigabytes of super fast internet. And it costs twice as less than that one, and I get 120 gigabytes.
That's weird.
Yeah, and I was like, but wait a second, why do I have to pay less and get so much if I don't need so much? Can I just pay even less than that and just get 40 gigabytes?
That's weird. But yeah, so with the cell phone carriers, basically a lot of that stuff can be automated. You know what I mean? Like I don't need to call in like, oh, and another thing, I don't know why this isn't a thing, but you can't make partial payments on a phone that you agree to pay over 24 months. Like, why can't I just make partial? That's so dumb. Like, why can't I make partial payments? That's just idiotic. I was able to do it at Sprint. It's like some companies you can and some companies you can't, and that just doesn't make sense. So, but
Yeah,
like
I
I
mean,
like I
there are a
said,
lot of things that don't make sense, but then again, there are a lot of dumb people in charge of making the decisions.
that's true. But the one things that I will say is great about Verizon, the company here in America, even though it is more expensive, there's pros and cons to every company. Like for example, one of the biggest companies, Sprint, is merging with T-Mobile now.
I mean, T-Mobile is the worst in Germany. They offer the least amount of things for the most amount you can think of. Like, I've seen a commercial recently, like something grab now 10 gigabytes for like 50 euros or something like that.
That's not a lot.
Yeah, it's like, hello, it's the 2000s. They called back. They want their plans back.
Yeah, yeah, I'd agree. But to wrap that up, I mean the automation. There's just a lot of things that are being automated that are good. I would like to not have to deal with somebody. But
Mm.
like you said, there are different tiers of support where there's still people that are necessary. And that's just, maybe a couple levels of, call support does get automated. But there could be an argument, like you mentioned, where there's still a human being somewhere. The one thing I just completely disagree with, though, are companies that don't have any support at all. Google's
Oh
one
yeah,
of them. Facebook's one of them. Like to get a hold of somebody, it's a nightmare. Now, granted, I get it when there's
I'm
like,
battling with Google. I think I already told you the story over Facebook that I'm battling with Google the last month and a half to get AdSense working on my website.
yeah, you're talking about that, yeah.
And it's crazy because they couldn't implement a simple feature so I can change the country I'm in. And my initial account was set in Bulgaria because I created like 7, 8 years ago. And now I cannot change it to Bulgaria, to Germany. And I have to create a new account, but then I have to close my old one, which was never completely verified. But to close it, I have to verify it. But for that, I need to get a code through the post that they can send only to Bulgaria.
Oh my god.
Like, kill me now. It's just like, it's so hard to. Oh yeah, also because I have some money that I never like
Claimed.
gotten. Yeah, I never claimed, and it's above their threshold. They say, okay, we cannot just you need to verify your account so we can send you this money. We can. And I was like, okay, I don't want it. Just close the account. They still
Wow.
cannot do it. I'm
Yeah.
offering them to take back all the money and just to close the account. Nothing.
So you don't have family in Bulgaria that can like you can send the postal to?
They don't have a key from the post box.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Yeah.
Man, that's complicated. That is frustrating. And but that's the problem with these huge companies though, is they become so large that when you need actual support and it's not something that, because they're always going to point you to articles or email or whatever, but you don't even get email until you've gone through so many convoluted ways just to get to email.
Mm.
Um, but that's kind of where like
What
the
I don't
user,
understand is that they're losing money this way.
yeah, that's true.
You have so many regulations on YouTube channels that make no sense because of Logan Paul and all the other crap that happened. Why did the small YouTube channels had to pay for that?
That's true.
Uh, they're losing money from that. The fact that I cannot set up more than 2 months the AdSense with my new account, they're losing money with that because just in the first 2-3 days I earned I don't know 10 euros from my website with just a single blog post. Imagine, I mean, this is putting my website also on hold because I'm not going to just put out content without ads and so on. That's the whole point of me creating that and driving traffic to my website. But still, forget that I'm losing money. They are losing money. That's on a global scale when you multiply it by millions of people that want to use this.
That's true. Yeah. But they got billions of dollars, man. They can do whatever they want.
YouTube is still not profitable.
Yeah, I mean they're making tons of money, and whatever affects like their bigger advertising partners.
Or more like selling data to governments and so on.
Oh man, I don't even want to talk about that. I heard of a story where Google. That's partly why I switched over to Apple. To be honest, is I would hear horror stories of Google just blatantly just giving tracking data over to government agencies. And there was a guy who got pulled either out of his house or at his work. I think it was at his work. He got arrested. They were trying to find somebody and they used that data. It was the wrong person. Google gave them the wrong.
I think I read about that somewhere.
He lost his job. He couldn't get it back, even though they vindicated him and like they said, okay, we retract that. It was wrong. No, he still lost. I was like,
I mean,
that is
there
crazy.
is a reason why Germans are so paranoid from all of the Google stuff. It's like they're literally complete streets and districts here in Germany that have no street view. Or even if they have street view, the houses are blurred out because people complain that they have their house on Google Street.
Really?
Yeah. And I mean, Google is really bad here. Like I was used to using Google Maps to scout locations for photography and so on. I cannot do this in Germany. I have to go there in person to scout the location.
Oh, wow.
But in my opinion, I mean, Apple does the same. All of the big companies do it, like Apple, Facebook, Google. As long as you have data and the government is allowing you to exist, then you're selling some kind of data to them. It's like that's what I got from the Snowden movie.
Yeah, that's pretty true. I mean, and there's a lot of trade-offs though. Like we use social media and we are giving our likes and things like that. I think the one thing that bothers me the most about social media though is number one, when you ever go, you check into like a post or something and you try to go back to your feed and you're trying to read something. And then for whatever reason, your feed refreshes. You can never find that thing you were trying to look into because the algorithm changed the feed and that post is gone. You lost it. So that's one of my biggest annoyances. But back on the feed, like just that in general, because I've actually listened to Mark Zuckerberg explain the algorithm and the feed and why he thinks that's important instead of a chronological thing. But I think giving people the choice is important because like if I want a chronological feed, I'm on Facebook because I want to see like what did people post and when they post it. And then but what if you could have chronological for the people you care about? Like you could design your feed the way you want to And like, for example, you could have algorithm work within the feed that you design. And so that way, because that was his argument. He's like, if you have a chronological feed, then you're not going to see things that are important when it's important. Like somebody has like they always use like the general announcements, like, oh, we're gonna have a baby, or oh, it's somebody's birthday, or something big happened. Oh, I graduated from university, or
Oh, that defeats their agenda. I don't know if you've seen the movie The Social Dilemma on Netflix.
I have, yes.
Yeah, so that's the whole point. If they have this chronological thing and you switch to that, it defeats the purpose of Facebook to show you relevant information for what's happening right now in order to like manipulate how you see things.
That's true, but there is an argument to be made, like I was mentioning, because what I was explaining was a chronological feed that's designed by you, but it's basically a chronological feed in addition to the algorithm. So, like, you kind of have the option to decide what updates you want to see, right?
Mm.
Because that changes every day. Because I got a best friend I've known for years. I would love to see any updates him and his family make, but at the same time, there could be somebody that I meet and then we become friends and then all of a sudden we fall apart or whatever. We're not friends anymore. Or it's just that natural thing that happens. We just stop talking and then I'm uninterested in their content. So I just choose to not see their content anymore, which you can with the follow feature. Where in Facebook you can follow somebody or unfollow them instead of unfriending them. Like, I still want to be friends with them, but I just don't want to see their content. There are people like that I've chosen to do that because most of the time, and this is my confusion, people will use personal profiles as a public figure page, which
Annoying as hell.
initially I was annoyed with it, to be honest, but then I kind of saw there are limitations to it always. But then I kind of started seeing like, okay, there's some value here. Like, I wouldn't get this if I hadn't liked this guy's page. So there's a give and take, I'll be honest. But if all I'm seeing is that type of content, then yeah, that's annoying. Because there are people where, it's as if I'm just following their public figure page. But I think it's valuable to have, because that's the struggle that I'm trying to figure out. Because I do have a public figure page and I do post content there. I try to post mainly that stuff there. Because I rant. I mean, you probably see my stuff. I post a lot of crazy stuff. But that's kind of what I enjoy about the personal account and why I feel like the personal profile is there for that reason. And then anything that you want to build as your skill set or your knowledge, you put that on your public figure page and post that content there. But yeah, I don't know. There's a little. I mean, I'm starting to change my opinion, which is awesome because you can do that. I don't know if people know that, but you can change your opinion. What you believed 2 years ago, or what you said 2 years ago, 1 year ago, doesn't mean you believe the same thing now, which is why I think all the Twitter stuff, like canceling people for stuff they said years ago, like,
No
really?
man, I mean this whole topic with canceling people about what they said is so American. So sorry, but it's like at least from what I've seen over here in Europe is like everyone I know is like, God damn, can you believe all that bullshit they're doing over there?
It's everybody. What is everybody just laughing at us?
Yeah, it's like who the hell gives a about what he said 10 freaking years ago?
That's what happened with the guy, James Gunn. He had made a lot of the Marvel movies, and some stuff that he said on Twitter years ago, years. I'm talking like I think it was at least over a decade. And he got fired. My thing is this: as a company, it's your obligation when you hire somebody to do a little bit of a background check. You do the criminal background check. You do that kind of stuff. Make sure they're not like a pedo, obviously, right? And they haven't like beat up their wife, but and like they're not going to be
Because like someone's gonna post that on Facebook.
right. But like, and even if they pass everything, but the point I'm getting at is like it's you should these large companies is what I'm saying, like high profile people that are going to be like very high profile, very high visibility. You should probably do a little bit of social media background, and they didn't, or they knew about it and didn't care, or maybe they just didn't look. You know what I mean? But
They
these
shouldn't care about what someone tweeted 10 years ago.
Right, they shouldn't, but then if they didn't care, they shouldn't fire somebody if they've been with the company and working with them for many years, and then all of a sudden this comes out. All they
Yeah,
should
that's
say
the point.
is
It's all about marketing. Like if there is a public outrage, they are gonna fire that guy in any case.
true.
It's like with the pride flags. There are companies, tech companies, for example, that have nothing in common with that. They don't have a product that's labeled, "Hey, this is only for the for the pride community and so on." But then again, they label their entire company in pride flags. Like, what does this have to do with your business?
Exactly. And that's kind of why, like, I think it's important to people to have these, or companies to have these values. Like, if you had these values before all these things started happening, why do you have to, excuse me, why do you have to, like, make it seem like it's relevant? Like, no, all you have
It's
to say
marketing.
is, we support you. That's it. That's it. Like we've already support, our values are documented in our bylaws or in, our mission statement or whatever. And it's already there. We already support you. We don't mind saying it out loud on social media. Like,
I mean, the whole thing about inequality in my mind is like handled really poorly right now. It's
yeah,
like
how so?
there are all these movements like the pride movement, the feminists, Black Lives Matter, and so on and so on and so on. But when you do it like that, that's just trying to put the inequality on the other side. So let's say you have the feminist movement. They don't want equal rights most of the time with men. They want more rights and so on. It's like for
Yeah.
me, what we should be striving is to have an equality movement. I know it goes in a little bit in the direction of communism, but hear me out. It has nothing to do with that. um, so it doesn't matter. Like we shouldn't have quotes. Let's say in this company we should have 50% women, 50% men, or we should have X% immigrants or so on from an African background and so on and so on. It should be who, for example, is the best person for the job. If it turns out that for this company it means 80% white males, okay. For the next company, it's going to turn out that it's 80% African American females.
Right.
It's
But
from business to business.
yeah, I agree. And then it's also because I know there's a thing where you can hire people out of your local area. So I know that. But like you said, it's all about who's the best candidate. You know what I mean? And then from that, it's also whoever's local. So you have to look at all that data. That's where I love the fact that I'm analytical because I can break apart things at least and understand a lot of it from the hiring perspective. I mean, you have all the statistics of who actually lives near you. Then you have to understand that like if you're going to open it up to anybody can apply from anywhere, then you're having, then it's just random. Then you look at the statistics of the people that are in those industries, and then you look at okay, what in the culture of the company or in the industry, what is deterring people of certain, you know, races or genders or whatever. Like what's actually making them feel like they don't want to apply. Like that's a better question, I think, is how are we not being inclusive just in terms of like because I didn't think communism when you said equality. Like I think equality from a human, and this is a conversation that I want to have, is the reason why I wanted to do this podcast, um, and have these conversations, is because these conversations are super important, and I think people need to have them. And it's amazing that I'm having it with somebody who lives across the world. That's what's cool right now. Like I'm literally talking to somebody in a whole other country, and we're able to talk about different things from different cultures, which is cool. Um, but the equality, from my perspective, should literally just be like you had mentioned earlier, because you're a manager and you interview people. Like, what is your mentality? How do you think? Like, do you have like the basic foundational experience that's just required for any job, right? You got to have some sort of experience, and if not, then you have to at least be able to start, like you mentioned, the apprentice opportunities that are available. Like you have to at least, because they're going to interview you and they're going to make sure that you're a good fit. Like, okay, from an apprentice position, they're going to expect A, B, C, D, and they're going to look for those things so that way they can make sure that you're going to fit there, and that's important. But the equality thing, it's going to be tough regardless. But I think what's important, like I mentioned before, is the better question is, what are the current statistics? I don't have anything in front of me, but the current statistics in the industry for the gender, for race, and just ask, like, what is causing them to feel like they don't want to apply? Like, is what's going on? Then you get into a broader issue of, okay, how is does everybody in the country have equal opportunity in education? Is the environments they live, are they do they have equal opportunity, equal access to the utilities? Like, how's the water? Like in America, how in the world do we have a situation where we have a state, and I think it's Michigan, Flint, Michigan, right? They're having a water issue, and they've had it for such a long time that it's become normal. It was in the news for a couple years back. It was huge, and then all of a sudden, like, I don't even know if it's been fixed. But why is that even an issue? We should, from a basic foundation, have utilities that are just afforded to everybody, because that's what it should be. Everybody should have access to free water, in my opinion, and you just pay a tax. Everybody should have access to electricity, in my opinion, and you pay a tax. It shouldn't be, and that's just a whole.
That goes a bit in the direction of communism a little bit.
Okay. Well,
I mean, at the end of the day, the tax is going to be defined as well on your consumption. So it's basically as paying off right now what you use.
So, and the reason why
you can't say that the people that have like a small house and a huge mansion should pay the same tax for.
You're right. So I don't have all the answers. What my main opinion is on this is, for example, on electricity. So I'm a huge fan of Tesla. Tesla was going to develop, and Chase, the guy who started the Chase Bank, he was funding his project. He was building a tower. Chase thought it was something different. He was building a tower for wireless electricity, and he was basically going to get it. I got to look back at how he was actually going to get the electricity. I think it was coming from the environment, from either the air or the ether or whatever, because Tesla was working on some crazy stuff. But he wanted it to be free, to where everybody had this, like, and what I mean by that, and you talk about usage, and that's important for finite resources, right? But there's a difference between finite resources and resources that are not finite. So if we had a way, and Tesla was encouraged to continue production, like if there was a universe where Tesla was able to continue his work and he didn't die an old lonely man with no money, and he actually passed on his knowledge to other people and people continued his work, and they found an unlimited supply of energy. At that point, if we have unlimited supply of energy, what's the question at that point? Like, how do you go with that? Well, it's just a matter of infrastructure at that point. Like,
define unlimited.
There's
unlimited for a single person and his entire lifespan, or what? Because there is nothing unlimited in the universe.
That's a good question. So let's just say we have unlimited energy. We can just pull from the ether, let's just say, right? And we have a device, let's call it the wireless tower, transmission tower, like what he was trying to build. If we had those around the country, then from a larger standpoint, we could transmit energy as much as needed. Let's say to a commercial, let's talk, because you talk about usage, and there's a mansion versus a small house. Then it's just a matter of what if you had. You would just have different units that are built for different usage, right? So you would have something for a general residential house. It could do way more than the house, but it's built for that house and the amount of electricity that thing could build. And if somebody wants to, say, have like larger one, maybe they have a different size house, or maybe they have other stuff on their land, and they want to do more projects, then you would just acquire a device, whether, and I guess what I'm thinking in the sense of what's already built, right? So, for example, we have tax that pays for roads. We have these things that, you have to pay tax for. But for companies that want to come in and do more, they have to apply for permits. They have to like pay money to the city. And there's different ways that they can do different things. And there's companies that build the equipment, and you can buy the equipment. So I do think there should be companies that can, make equipment, the infrastructure. But in terms of the electricity and the transmission, I don't think that should be paid for. I
I
just
mean, it's just a perspective. For example, you have countries like Denmark, where you have free Wi-Fi all over the country, but it's taxed.
that's a good example, right? So you're paying for infrastructure because that is truly unlimited. There really is not, unless
I mean,
somebody.
it's just a definition of what's the basic package.
Right. So obviously
I
you have.
do say that the person needs like a basic package. I agree totally for that. It's like, you remember that example for the inequality with the three guys standing by the fence, and they had the same amount, the same boxes, but one was taller, one was shorter.
Right, and you just change the
They couldn't
boxes.
see over the, yeah, they couldn't see over the fence. Well, that for me is actually equality, because I mean, we are now, nobody is the same as the next person.
Exactly, and
Equality is getting this initial package. Let's say you have a roof over your head, you have access to education, you have clothes, you have food, you have water, and that's it. From there on, what you do is up to you, and it's not a fact about inequality or something like that, because you were a lazy ass and didn't study, for example.
Exactly, and that's where, like, I think. So let's talk about the infrastructure, right? Because with unlimited energy, you have to ask yourself, okay, so we have unlimited energy, and then a company's not going to profit off of the transmission of that energy, right?
Oh, they're gonna find a way to do that.
What's that?
They're gonna find a way to do that.
No, of course, but I'm just saying in the example, the transmission, because that's actually what Tesla wanted to do. The problem that Chase disagreed with and stopped the funding was because he asked, could we put a meter on it? That was his question. Can we meter and track, the amount of electricity that's being sent? And Tesla said, no, I don't want to do that. Now, the thing is you ask the question, okay, so how, if you're going to do those towers, how would you pay for it? It's a very good question. The thing that I'd like to talk about is, like, different cities want, it becomes a political situation, and it becomes like more of like, what value can that give the city, and then how does that look on a politician? They're going to find the money. I mean, if I know there's no exact answer, and it's a tough conversation to have, because people are going to say, oh, you want free everything, well, you don't want to work for nothing. That's not true. I just think as a human race, like, if we're going to talk about that, right, I think, like you mentioned, you should have the basic fundamentals that you need so that you can expand your knowledge, whether that be through education. You want to learn more, you want to become a scientist, and you want to push the boundaries of science. You want to become an engineer, push the boundaries of engineering. You want to become an educator, which is a lot of YouTube, and you want to push the boundaries of education. You want to help people learn more. You want to become a politician because you want to help your local community, or your city, or your state, or even the country for that matter. Those are things that I feel like, because when you think of what's going on right now, right, the boundaries to entry, or I think that's the right way to say that. The barrier to entry. Sorry, the barrier to entry to a lot of things has to do with time, and then you have stress, and then you have energy and mental capacity. Right now, because I'm working a full-time job.
No self-awareness in most people.
Exactly. But the problem is you're not able to explore that if you have a full family, and your morning you wake up, it's not yours. Even if you're able to, as somebody who's self-aware enough to be like, okay, I need like 30 minutes to myself in the morning. Cool. You go to work. Now your 8 hours are not yours. Then you come home and you have a wife that you need to tend to. You have kids you need to tend to. And then by the time you go to bed, it's like, okay, do I get another half hour by myself? It's like there's not enough time. And so this goes into a broader conversation of like, what human race, what should it be doing? How should we actually be? And it's a larger conversation.
I can totally summarize this thing. Is, first of all, what one thing that I've learned throughout my moves to Germany and so on is like the whole concept of countries is outdated.
I can agree.
Totally outdated. I mean, I live in a neighborhood where we have people from almost over 50 countries.
Right. And that's the same in America, you know?
It's insane. I don't think there are a lot of countries in Europe where you can actually have this field to see how it's like to live with so many different people. But then again, people should know their places as well. If we don't have a country, you should know where you fit. You, for example, like let's take the NBA. You cannot whine that you didn't get drafted in because you're too short, and there is inequality for short people, and short people should play also in the NBA, and blah blah blah. Like that's what I like about sports. If you're good, you're going pro. Doesn't matter where you come from, what's the color of your skin, what language you speak, you will go pro. And that's
Right.
why, for example, in the NBA we have so many African Americans, but then again we don't have too many Asians.
Yeah, if there's Asians, they're tall as hell.
Yeah, I mean, okay, we have a couple from China, but that's it, and they just don't fit there. They know it, and they don't whine about it. That's like a cool point about their mentality.
Yeah.
It's like they know, okay, a lot of Asians are good at math and so on, and being doctors or being forced to do that anyways, they're good at it.
Yeah, a lot of the cultures, the families force their kids to do certain things, yeah.
But I mean, at the end of the day, they are good at it. Why not?
That's true. But to wrap up the whole energy thing, I mean, I know I don't have all the answers, but I agree with Tesla's perspective on how the transmission of electricity should be free. Obviously, there's a bigger conversation like, hey, like how do you get people to pay for the infrastructure? Well, I mean, we already pay tax on water infrastructure. We already pay tax on a lot of the things that we have, like transportation. Like you have a tax that pays for the infrastructure for lights. But the reality is the cost would be at such a low point that it wouldn't matter. You know what I mean? Like companies, for example, companies, if let's just put that in perspective, okay? So if you have companies that are pulling a lot of power, right? So let's just say the infrastructure is built in such a way that there's certain towers for a certain amount of usage, right? So commercial buildings would have a large tower because they have a large amount of electricity needs for whatever that is, right? We'll take Tesla, the company Tesla, for example. Their gigafactories, from my understanding, are built in such a way that they are self-sufficient. They don't require outside electricity because they make their own. And so, like, the whole facility is powered by its own. I think that's kind of their goal. And so that kind of gets into the conversation of, is it possible? Yes. Companies, I mean, obviously they're doing it through solar panels, but like in my example, we're using just wireless transmission of electricity. But those companies would pay just a larger tax because they're paying for the infrastructure, or they're just paying for the structure, the tower. And that's pretty much it. Because when you have wireless transmission of electricity, you don't need wires, you don't need poles, you don't need conduits of any kind.
But you still need maintenance.
Yeah, except for inside the buildings for sure. But maybe even not so, because again, if we're talking about wireless electricity, then you have the ability to have computers, for example, like laptops and towers and things like that, all have electricity. Little tiny towers, we'll just say that, right?
I mean, that's a really interesting concept, but just think about it. People are protesting against 5G. Do you think they're gonna accept this?
So that's a good point, and I don't know the answer to that, because then again I don't even know how the wireless electricity would flow. Like how, like what
I mean, your scenario is like the best case scenario where we should develop as a species and so on. But sadly, throughout the past years, I can say that we're going more into the direction of the Idiot, of course, movie, where it's like dumbing down and down and down.
So I think the problem that I've seen with the 5G though is that because there's so many towers, it's about the amount of frequency that's being bombarded, not only the number of towers, but the amount of frequency so close. And you get into like heat, just the way radiation works, like just the way it works. And being close, people that work on towers have literally been reported just on that alone. Just the people that work on the towers. There's been a lot of cases of people getting cancer and things like that. And so
I mean, that's the case in nuclear plants as well, but that hasn't stopped people.
that's true. But I guess for the sake of the
Same goes
example,
for doctors that are exposed to X-rays a lot.
the technicians, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I guess
there
for
are
wireless
plenty of
electricity, it would
things that
be.
are like. Yeah, sorry, continue.
No, I was just going to say just to wrap that up, the wireless transmission of electricity would be at such a low frequency. That would be the best way that I could look at it. Is it would be at such a low transmission frequency that it wouldn't actually affect us at all, and science would be able to back that up, and there wouldn't be any hidden agendas. I'm not saying I'm looking for the utopia, but if we're taking from the perspective of, say, Star Trek, right? Um, I don't know. I look at it and go, where are we going to go next? We can go down the lane of conspiracy theory, which says that after terrorists, there's going to be an alien invasion. Have you seen Independence Day 2? I mean, come on. We're going to be all the same country. We're just going to have a council of leaders. You know, what are your thoughts on that?
Honestly, if something like that happens, I do expect that we're still gonna fight between each other, and freaking aliens will just wipe us out.
So you don't think that we would come together as a global nation?
Nope, fading humanity is lost on my side. I'm a pessimist.
All right then.
I mean, we cannot get ourselves to just like take care of our climate, let alone work together to fight the aliens and so on.
That's true. But I guess, I don't know, my perspective is a little different where because I've actually seen how people are, for example, like just the behavior that I had growing up that I just learned on how to treat people. We don't have to get in down the topic of race necessarily, but like I grew up describing other people. My mom would say my friend Rachel. She wouldn't say my black friend Rachel. So I never associated race with a person until I actually started seeing and hearing and learning about people saying certain words. And then I was taught that those words are bad. And then I was taught that, like, certain way that somebody behaves, like, was associated with a certain race. And then I started seeing that in other races. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, if somebody's just being a bad person, they're just being a bad person. It doesn't matter what their color is. And that's.
Yeah, you know what? That's really interesting for me, like the whole N-word thing in the US,
Yeah,
which is totally weird for me because that means black in Spanish.
that's true.
It's
And
like, what the hell? It's like, okay, I understand the whole background from where it comes from, but then again, you can go to an African American and tell him that he's black, but you cannot tell him that he's black in Spanish.
that's a good point. And that's where I think a lot of context is very important because it depends on which country you're in. And the language as well. Because obviously, if you're speaking Spanish, you're going to say that, but you're speaking Spanish, and people are going to look at you like you're dumb. But I think people are smart enough to know if somebody's speaking Spanish and they say that, it just means Spanish. They're speaking Spanish. But yeah, no, I agree with you. But like that's where I've made the argument for all of this stuff that's been happening in America. I've been making the argument like this stuff is taught. Like these cops that are bad, they're in a bad culture that is being perpetuated and being taught and just continued through the ranks. No matter who comes in, they're just taught through the culture, and that's what's going on. I didn't.
Then we have the another point, the whole topic about cultural appropriation. That's total nonsense as well.
I know based on an article that I've read from an honest perspective from somebody who was a white cop. He was through him going through academy all the way to getting to a precinct. He was pressured, even so, to be a part of the culture or else. There wasn't like I don't want to be that.
That's in every country, man.
Yeah, but
I can give an example from Bulgaria where it's like 99% of the population is European.
Yeah.
We have a lot of football matches with rival fans and so on, and they intentionally put the cops that are fans of the rival team to guard the other team fans, so they can kick their asses at the end of the game.
Wow.
I mean, it's not always about race, but there is always hidden things that are political games and so on that play through the cops, because at the end of the day, cops are a tool for the politicians.
That's true. And the thing that's annoying is the division. Like, there's a lot of things in America. For example, like even with the debate that just happened, there's so much that's going on that I feel like, first off, politicians don't have enough time to talk about issues that are serious. They need podcasts like this. I think they need more opportunity to have longer conversations and just have civil discourse. Like, it's important to have conversations. Like, you can't, it's very difficult to talk about a serious topic and present actual evidence and then have opportunities to like gather evidence and like just sit down and have a discussion. Like, I think what's important, and this is where my view is always fluid, it's always changing, but I do think it's important to have panels of experts, which we all know it may or may not work well. But I think, for example, there's infrastructure, right? So we should have a panel of plumbers that are expert plumbers that decide what I would say the country, not, this is what doesn't make sense to me. Things that should be the same.
Plumbers or civil engineers, doesn't matter. Yeah, I got what you mean.
Yeah, like things that are the same everywhere you go. Like, everybody needs power, everybody needs water, everybody needs a structure that's going to stay up during rainstorms and all that. And so it begs the wrong thing to say, but for me, I think there needs to be a panel of electricians, panel of expert plumbers that decide countrywide what those things should be. Same thing with doctors and all this other stuff. When we have politicians,
you missed out on one key point here. It always ends up going for a decision to the person that controls the money.
That is true. That is true.
Usually these people are economists that have no freaking clue from the technical aspects and just say, okay, that's too expensive, dumb it down.
Yeah, I mean, the money always talks, but from a regulatory perspective, that's what I'm referring to. Like, I think it's important to have. I just think it's a really unintelligent for politicians to be speaking on things they don't have expertise in.
And you have plenty of examples of politicians that do that.
Yeah, and that's why I think when you want to talk about like what the problems are, the problems really come down to politicians not seeking expert advice from people that are experts in their fields. Now, granted, there's problems there too, because when you get into the industry of people being experts in their field, for example, Joe Rogan has had a lot of people on his podcast. Graham Hancock is one of them. And then there's another guy, John Anthony West. He did a series called Magical Egypt, and I've been meaning to watch it. But these are people that are trying to find the truth. So their mentality is, I want the truth. I don't care about my reputation. I don't care what people think about me. I want to go find the truth. Like, there's a lot of conversations that have been had and research that's been done into psychedelics, certain mushrooms, and certain things that produce sort of a certain experience with certain liquids or mushrooms or whatever. They give you like just a certain experience where you're outside of your own body per se, right? And there's been tons of, the thing that bothers me is like there's tons of examples of how that stuff actually has been done, but us as a society are treating that like it's garbage, like it's not real. I'm like, but they've been doing it for thousands of years. How is it not? Like, you're acting as though it's this thing that should never be done. But then I found out why. There was a guy that wrote a book, and I never knew this. Now, I used to be a huge Christian. I still believe there's something out there, but I'm no longer a Christian in my perspective anymore as a religion.
Same here.
My reasoning is because there's way too many questions. I started looking at the Bible. Again, I'm analytical. So I'm looking at the Bible. There's a lot missing. There's a lot going on here. Then I started looking at the translations. People made a lot of mistakes, or there was agendas around the translation. Then you go back to the King James Bible, and then there's examples of how that could have been tampered with. Then you had the tons of books that were taken out of the Bible. Just a lot of questions there. Why was that the case?
I mean, the Bible that's used in Europe right now was literally written in like, I don't know, around 200 AD,
Yeah,
like 600 kilometers away from where I was born. So
that's crazy.
I ain't taking the Bible for that. Like for me, religion was always a political tool, and it still isn't. And that's why I think all religions should be banned in general. Like you're free to believe in your God, whatever. Just like churches, mosques, and so on should be just like statues, nothing more.
I don't know about the
Shouldn't be like
banning.
priests and so on, because that's like controlling the masses, and that's not good. Like just keep in mind that the Vatican has enough money to end world hunger.
No, yep, you got a good point. The thing that I learned, and there's a guy, I forgot I'll send you the podcast that Joe Rogan did, but there was a guy that wrote a book, and he found out why priests in the Catholic religion back in the day were basically saying any drugs, right? Anything that you take that gives you an experience that's different, makes you feel like you're in heaven. That's kind of the point they were getting at. It's like these psychedelic experiences, they make you feel like you're in heaven, or you're taking, or some it's instances you're actually speaking to another being. This isn't just produced in your head. Like you legitimately, your essence, your presence, your awareness is now somewhere else. What I was mentioning before when I was driving to work, in a different conversation we were having, the reason why I want to buy a Tesla is because I just don't like driving. I like thinking. I like getting lost in my thought. But I realized, which can be scary, but you get so monotonous with driving. It's the same thing every time. Your brain starts to get to a point where it's like, this is boring, and your mind goes other places. My awareness, no joke, and you probably experienced this, where your awareness literally leaves, you don't see through your eyes anymore.
Oh yeah, I've had stretches like I drive back home from work and I was like, I have no memory of how I got home.
Exactly, but you're in your thought, you're thinking about something else, and like that's what happened to me. I was thinking about, oh, it would be kind of cool to be on Joe Rogan's podcast because we would have like these really awesome conversations, and that's what I was thinking about. But no joke, my awareness was there, but I was not seeing through my eyes.
I mean, what you're trying to describe right now sounds a little bit like the theory about the global consciousness that has
Exactly.
technically a scientific explanation. It cannot be proven, but it has a scientific explanation. Like it's the Newton laws. Basically, you have electricity running through your brain, and the Newton law says that energy is never lost. It just changes. It just changes its form at some point. So, for example, when you die, this energy from the electricity in your brain just changes form, and that's arguably what your conscience is. This electricity. Yeah. And then when it changes its form, you go to the next level, which is, for example, a global conscious or something like that. Right. Also, there is this picture of the universe, like a representation of how the universe looks, and it strangely resembles the nerves in your brain.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe we're just part of a huge ass brain.
That's possible. That'd be pretty crazy. Have you seen the show Rick and Morty?
Yep.
There's an episode where he has a universe in a box that generates electricity.
That has a universe.
Yeah.
Yeah. This concept is actually pretty old. I think it was like back in the first Men in Black or something like that, or the second one, where our universe became just a pool ball for some huge aliens.
Yeah, they're those nuts. And then they busted open the door and they were in the locker of a big ass alien airport or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was crazy. I love stuff like that. But to get back to the global consciousness, that's actually kind of stuff that my wife and I are kind of diving into. Like I just, so to the psychedelics though that I was talking about, like the guy that wrote a book that's in the podcast that I'll send you, he was talking about there was a secret mystery society or secret mystery whatever, because back in the day, like thousands of years ago, the biggest thing was these mystery schools, mystery whatever, and it was like, you had to know somebody that knew about it, and you would go there, but you would go there and they talked about meeting a goddess, and other people that have actually today in this time that talked about the like the different experiences they've had. They've actually met a female sort of godlike figure, right? And it's supposedly supposed to be Gaia, the mother of the earth, is what some people say, but they normally kind of have an experience with a female type figure. And when he started progressing kind of what the book was about, he talks about how, well, when you have priests, one of the main reasons why priests would yell and be mad and angry at someone that would actually take drugs is because, well, if you take drugs and you're doing psychedelics, that takes your awareness somewhere else and you're getting heaven, right? You don't need the priest. Well, the priest is
Yeah,
supposed to take you.
that's my point. Like priests
Yeah,
and churches are to control people, nothing more.
exactly. I do agree to an extent. Yeah, I think people should
From
have
a
the freedom to
human
believe.
greed perspective only, nothing else.
I think people should have the freedom to like believe what they want. I don't agree with the banning of religion. I just think you have a point. There is an issue with them controlling the masses, and that's tough because when you don't have the freedom of information and just truth, really, let's talk about that because that's a problem in some Christian denominations, is they're brainwashing people, and like you have the Westboro Baptist Church that are literally protesting soldiers' funerals. Like, why are you doing that? You know, like these concepts of like is no longer about the Bible. This is about your own agenda. And that I agree that's terrible. It's a very tough thing to discuss. And how do you handle that?
This is the
Um,
first time I've heard about that, like
yeah.
about the protest.
So that's an issue in America. If you look up the Westboro Baptist Church, it's a denomination. I
And
don't.
what's the reason behind that? I mean, they should have like a statement. Why are they protesting against that?
Well, so we're in America, we're free to protest. So they are
I mean,
free.
yeah, that I know that, but like when you protest, you say, okay, I don't like that because something.
Right. They were saying that it was because of some sort of something in the Bible. They basically were cherry picking things in the Bible that were saying that soldiers were something or other, or there was a reason for it. I have to look it up, but it was just an example of why in your what you were saying, why I think religion is bad. The reason why I pulled away from it was because I had too many questions, and when I would ask, and this isn't putting a friend of mine in a bad position, but it's just that the situation that happened for me that made me think more in a different perspective. I asked him, I said, "Do you believe in aliens? Do you believe in other life in this universe?" He said no because us being the only life is God's testament to how amazing He is, and I'm like,
Bro,
it blew my mind. And then they were like, if it's not in the Bible, it didn't happen. And I was like, but even if you read the Bible, and this is where I get annoyed because people want to cherry pick what's in the Bible and what's not. Is
I'm
Jesus?
actually on the other side here with the aliens thing. Is I want to believe there is something else out there, because if we're the peak of intelligence in the whole universe, that's super depressing.
Yeah, I agree. But he was like, if it's not in the Bible, it didn't happen. But I was like, even Jesus said there's a lot that's not written. He even said that if you read the Bible, it does say that Jesus said there's a lot that is not written. And so that's kind of why I have a huge issue with it. And then you look at with the guy going back to the podcast with the guy talking about his book, he was like, he continues the whole like priests, they held on to that, which is why the Catholic Church was damnifying anybody who was doing anything that was not of the church. It was like it was science, but they were like, no, that's not of God, so that's not true. And so they were controlling, like you mentioned, controlling the true science, the true, these things. But my belief is like, if God is real, it doesn't matter what happened. You can call it a miracle, but it happened a certain way. There's a way that you can explain it. You may not know how to explain it, but there's a way that it actually happened within our universe somehow, some way. It just we can't explain it. But magic, that's why people say magic is science that we can't explain.
Have you seen the movie Prometheus?
Is that the one where it's the
From the
aliens like
yeah,
prequel? Yeah.
yeah, this is like a really interesting movie. It like gets you thinking how they found out that actually our creator just wanted to destroy us at the end. And to be fair, this is something that I expect to be an actual reality, that we were created by some crazy advanced alien species. It's most likely if they see us today, they would want to wipe us out.
Yeah, like they made us and forgot about us type of thing.
Yeah, it's like, oh shit, the planet has mold. We should put it on fire or something.
Planet has mold. Wow.
Yeah.
Um,
To be
that's
fair, we are like mold or cancer to the planet at the end of the day.
That's true. And that's something where, like, going back to like my big view of what I think humanity should be, we should, like, if we're going to kill a planet, right? The planet's going to respond. These natural disasters are going to continue to happen until the planet can get to a state that it's healthy and stuff like that, you know? And that's why I think, like, in the end, humans are just going to die because they're going to kill themselves if they don't be smart about what they're given, right? I mean, it's like anything you have in your house. If you have a plant in your house, like you have plants behind you, if you don't take care of that plant, it's going to die. So I just look at that same example with the planet. Like, if we don't take care of our planet, it's going to die. That's just point
No,
blank.
it's not. It's not a problem if the planet dies if we can survive somewhere else.
Exactly. That's also
But
a problem
there are
too.
two big points here. First of all, just imagine, like, if you fly to the other side of the planet, the viruses there could kill you. So you need to get all this shots before you go and so on. And this
That's
is
true.
on our planet. Imagine going on a planet that supports life.
Ooh, yeah, that's
There's,
nuts.
I mean, I mean, we need to evolve super fast. And then
Like
again,
Mars.
right now, evolution is not working with people. With all of this benefits and so on, everyone has the equal opportunity to reproduce. So technically, evolution is not working.
Well, true. It is and it isn't. I think it is. You have to find the cases in which it is, because that's where, you have to ask yourself, like, what are you following, right? For me, I like to follow and look into different things that are happening around the country. More so if I just see something in my news feed that's science related or biology related, I like to look into it just to check it out if it interests me. One story that interested me was a story about these people that live solely on the water. They rarely go to land, and because of this, their spleen is a lot larger. I think I'm talking about the right organ. It holds more blood, so these people literally can free dive for a hell of a lot longer than a normal human being. But because over generations, that's what they've just done. The body is
Yeah,
adapted.
but that's evolution. On the other hand, you can cut this out if it's too controversial for your podcast. I've read an article about people with Down syndrome, both of them, getting married and having kids. That also came out with Down syndrome. It's like that. That's anti-evolutionary. I mean, I'm happy for them that they found love and so on, but for God's sake, don't reproduce, because that's not gonna end well.
True. Well, I think you make a
I mean,
point.
at
It's
least
it's
at least
not
the
it's
people
not
know, they have from their experience, they know
right.
how much they suffered. Why would you want your kids to suffer as well?
That's true, and this is where this and I'm not going to cut it out. By the way, I that's the whole point of this conversation is that we can have different perspectives, different beliefs. I want to be clear, like it's not going to be cut out. But what I think is important to kind of break apart there is then you get into like, are the people educated? When I say educated, I mean like, do people have the knowledge of what's going to happen when they reproduce? I, for one,
People know.
I do believe that there are people with Down syndrome that are very smart, and there's the capability there. I know they have different. I don't know if it's disabilities or they have like certain differences. Let's put it that way. Um, than a normal person without Down syndrome. That much is true, but it doesn't mean they can't at least have the knowledge to say, okay, if we're gonna have the kids, then there is a higher chance that we're gonna have a son or daughter with Down syndrome. And then I guess because it's a free country, they can make that choice. Is it valuable to? Because we go into a lot of different types of conversations. Like it's I don't know the word for it, but it's like it's not it's not philanthropy. That's different. Um, I don't know the word for it, but it's like there's a terminology that goes along with the conversation that would be had on whether or not it's a good idea for them to have kids. If there's a higher chance of Down syndrome, I think it's a matter of like we live in a society in a world where
I
like
think it's a question of ethics at the end
there
of
you
the
go.
day.
Well, I don't know. again, I don't know the word, but the point of it is because we live in a world that literally is the safest. When I say safest, I'm talking about in a span of hundreds of thousands of years, if not tens of thousands of years, where other times you can get killed by just taking a
Going
journey.
out.
You
Yeah.
yeah, you can just start and somebody would just kill you just because you were near their home or whatever.
Or you just have a coat.
Yeah, or exactly. A lot of people die just because of bad hygiene or bad health.
Then again, we have also one point is this is just a theory I have that actually autism is the next level of evolution, and we're labeling it as a disability at the end of the day wrongly, because right
I
now
can agree.
society has evolved so much that you don't need to be really good at a lot of things to survive. You actually need to be good at a single thing, and that's what most people having autism are. They're really, really good at that single one thing, and that's the next step in order to like evolve humanity to the next level to have this global community of people knowing their place, working exactly where they're the strongest.
That's true. I mean, that is a thing in society right now. We have different industries for different things. Um, I guess if we're going to bring that topic up, my perspective, do you think? Well, it's a good question. Do you think autism is natural, or do you think it's an issue of like it's a result from say a vaccine or something like that?
It's definitely natural.
So
I
you don't.
mean, I can say that, for example, mistakes happen. As an engineer, I always see medicine as not a accurate science. You cannot measure it. There are some errors and so on, but intentional ones, no. I mean, even for example, the conspiracy theory that the corona situation is an intentional release of a virus and so on, and this is technically World War III. I don't believe it's intentional. I think it might have been created intentional, but the release wasn't.
I guess I
So
don't know.
all of it for me are just screw ups,
I don't know.
nothing more.
The thing that about that, which is so fishy, is, and it could have been an accident, very well could be. The only thing that kind of deters me from thinking that is
Have you
there's
read
been
ever
people
the
that have come out.
effect on any medicine?
Well, we'll jump back to the vaccine thing in just a sec, but the coronavirus, I think it's and I probably shouldn't call it that because they can probably uh, I don't know, take my video down. I don't know. The C word, we'll call it that.
Okay.
So there's been people that have come up that are actual either virologists or they're experts in the field of, I think it's biology or genetics or whatever the case is. And they were saying that it's engineered. It's not a natural virus. That because that's the argument is like, is it natural or was it engineered? And there's been plenty of people that have the credentials to say that it was engineered and that it was released on purpose, simply because of you can say oops all day, but when you have a certain level of a lab level, meaning like the safety level, um, then if you never, well, I know that the lab in Wuhan had a citation based on what I've heard for safety. So there is a possibility that maybe it was released by accident, but there's people that are saying that the chances of that are very low, and that if you think
And
about
then
it,
again, there are plenty of major fuck ups in history. So,
that's very true.
but think about the other thing: the big ego of people think, "Oh yeah, this is humanly engineered, blah blah. We are great. We can do that."
Right.
What about that? For example, this could be the answer of nature for our stopped evolution, because a lot
It's
of
true.
people with chronic diseases and so on that typically would die in other ages right now are living healthy lives, and this virus is attacking exactly them, the weakest people.
That's true. That's
So
true.
maybe this is just an answer from nature that said, "Hey, you screw up with evolution, we screw back with you even harder."
That's a very good argument. I don't have any credentials to say either or, but I can only
I mean,
speculate on things I
that's
hear.
how I explain it to myself. Like that makes
It
the
makes sense. I don't know.
logic.
The thing with me, man, is as I like to look into, because I guess the reason why I lean a little bit into conspiracy theories sometimes is because you have to look at the things that people. I
People are
feel
nasty. I mean,
when
I'm
you,
all for conspiracy theories, and I'm pretty sure like a good percentage is
yeah.
true.
Well,
But I
because
also
so I look at conspiracy theories are like, for example, when you're doing something in your life and a lot of people are telling you no, there's so many people that are against what you're doing because it's against the normal flow of things, but then you succeed and you make a lot of money. Like Joe Rogan, for example, he his family was telling him when he's growing up, don't do the comedy thing because it's not going to work. It's the percentages are very low. He didn't care. He went for it, and obviously he made it. He's making a lot of money doing that, and he's doing other things too, right? But that's kind of the way I look at it. Is like people are going to tell you no, and but you're going to do it anyways. So that's kind of I don't know. That's the way that I look at it.
mm, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like for me, as I said, like a big percentage of the conspiracy theories is true, but then again, there is a huge amount of things that we cannot even expect how bad are people and how many
True. The tough
hidden
thing with
stuff there is.
Yeah, the tough thing
That
with
just seems
conspiracy.
impossible or
Yeah,
something like that.
the tough thing with conspiracy theories too is it becomes an industry in of itself. So people will perpetuate things, they'll pull things out, and they'll take anything out of small amounts of something, and they'll bring it into this big thing just because they know they can make a documentary or whatever, and they can make money doing it. So that's also a really tough thing. But what I mean by like a lot of people, a lot of negativity towards one thing is with conspiracies. Sometimes it's like there's a lot of people and a lot of people pushing to create disinformation. There's a lot of people saying that this isn't true, blah 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 blah.
I
The
have to
problem
bring it back
is,
to Men in Black. Remember what
well,
they said in the
true,
first
a
movie
lot exactly.
with
A
the
lot of
papers and so on?
they can fabricate whatever they want. So when you come to evidence, when you can literally pay a scientist to say that something's safe or whatever the case, now you're basically creating your own evidence for your own argument out of thin air. So that's where you're like literally in you're in you're in a ocean in a boat without a paddle. You really can't go anywhere. There's nothing to be done because if somebody can create their own evidence for their own argument and that's the basis in which people are using to decide something, well that's very difficult. And so that's where like
And
I
think
personally
about it. We're back at the religion point.
right.
That's exactly what religion did. But now we're doing this through internet. It's just like politics evolves and brings on the next tool.
Oh God, the internet has literally made everybody like that's
I mean,
so.
if you have something in your head, you can use actually the internet properly to your advantage.
But yeah, though. So I mean,
Just cut
if
out the Mossad part of the podcast, please.
what is that by the way
That's like the CIA of Israel.
of Israel?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
And
Uh,
it's not like that they're most likely not monitoring this code at all, because we've mentioned a lot of things that triggers a lot of
I'm pretty sure
outcomes.
they are. But I mean,
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
pretty sure that a lot of podcasts do. They always talk about a lot of stuff that trigger a lot of things.
yeah. Also, the fact that the CIA is monitoring everything in Germany.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
yeah, there is a law that the German government cannot listen into people, but there is no law stating that they cannot invite the CIA to listen for them.
That's a workaround.
Yeah, the problem is then that's why we had the scandal that they listened on Merkel as well, because I mean they invited them to the table and said, yeah, you shouldn't eat, and I mean they started eating. They were everything.
That's
There is
nuts.
like an American base that's like just 50 kilometers away from me. Like
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I know we
I
got some
have like
bases.
Apaches flying over my house every now and then. So
Yeah, yeah, man, it's crazy how many bases are in different countries. But the allies are pretty important. So
I'm all against that, to be honest.
yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you should pack your military stuff and bring it back home.
Why so?
Because I'm not a big fan of the U.S. Army in general.
Okay.
For example, when the war was in Yugoslavia, because of a bug in your targeting system, one of your missiles landed 20 kilometers away from my town, which is in
Oh,
another fucking country.
oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
In Iraq, some of our soldiers that were sent there to support the U.S. Army were killed from friendly fire. No one said
Kidding.
anything about that. Yeah, 10 people were shot like dogs.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, we didn't even get an apology, like an official apology from, I don't know who was then in charge. Like, I, I think it was Bush.
Wow.
Which, I mean, it's fucked up. And to be fair, all those memes like, yeah, we found oil. Oh, you need some democracy. Those are kind of true.
No, I agree. There's a lot of the foreign policy that I disagree with wholeheartedly. Like, I hate
There
to
is a
say
really
it.
nice documentary on the history of money on YouTube.
Oh
And
yeah. Well, what I've
it was
seen. I've seen
talking
a lot
about
of.
the link to the dollar, how most
Oh
currencies
yeah.
are
They'll
linked
come
to
in.
the
They'll
dollar.
give you democracy, and because I've seen Iraq and Afghanistan before it was destroyed, and it was
And,
people
and those are countries that wanted to
have
remove
their
their
own.
link to dollar.
Yeah, they wanted
And
their own money. That's why Gaddafi died. Gaddafi was trying to do his own silver backed or whatever. That's partly why I think, in my opinion, Kennedy died. Like Kennedy wanted to have his own, or we wanted to switch to silver backed dollar, I think is what it was. But I think, yeah, like my belief on the foreign policy of America, because in all transparency, I've enlisted in the U.S. Army, and I didn't get to
I mean, I have a friend that's in the U.S. Army.
yeah, I didn't get to serve only because I have bad hearing apparently, which is dumb because I heard afterwards that everybody just clicks randomly on the button. Yeah, I was like, oh,
That's what I'm talking about.
yeah, they're like, you didn't know everybody's hearing sucks. They just keep pressing the button. I was like, oh my god. But hey, I'm happy it happened because I got to meet my wife. If it didn't happen, I would be in the military. I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't have been where I was to meet my wife. So I'm very grateful for that because she's been a great part of my life. But my belief on the foreign policy though is, for example, in college I did a paper on this because I did a small colleges in America. I've done like two, and one of them I did a paper in for um, how much money that we were spending for foreign aid and how it was way more than we spend in our own country. Like we spend more in foreign aid to other countries than we do for our own transportation budget, which means we care more about giving foreign aid than we do about our own roads, which is crazy. I didn't understand that because there's some cities and states, or I would say cities, that can't actually pay for their roads because it costs too much to upkeep them. So they just tear up.
Forget about that. Forget about that. Just move the budget from the U.S. Army to NASA, and we would colonize at least 3 planets in the next 20 years.
I agree, man. If we gave the military if we gave the budget for like 5 years, well, because
To scientists, give that money to scientists.
yeah, that would be pretty awesome. But my
I'm
my
pretty sure we would solve the climate issues. We would solve the hunger
oh,
issues.
that's how you know it's a political issue. Because if you just gave them the true answer that we really need, which is put the money where it needs to be, which is advancing humanity. Thank you. I think that would be the best thing to do. Is like
Yeah,
give.
the problem is human mentality is when were the biggest advancement in technology? During the Second World War and the Cold War. Because of fear that you will lose a war, you advance.
That's true.
You force technology.
Well, and I would say the world wars actually we advanced, but we went back as well because if you remember uh, with some of the history, I don't know if this is widely known in different countries. I don't even know if it's widely known in general. But that's why I love Joe Rogan's podcast because you learn a lot from different people. And there was somebody on there was talking about the chemicals. I can't remember who it was. That's probably one of the ones I was talking about. But they were talking about the chemicals. Actually, the chemical warfare started because of the wars, and but a lot of the pesticides, right, actually came from a lot of these soldiers being in positions where they're grouped up a lot. So you had lice. So there was a lot of chemicals they used to get rid of lice. Um, there was just, they were put in situations where they had to find solutions because soldiers were dying. And there was actually a lot of soldiers that died in World War I and II, actually not even because of the other side. They died just because of stuff because they were going in different environments. Like we talked about earlier, they were going into new
Think
environments.
about how weird is life. Hitler survived a gas attack in World War One.
That's weird.
Yeah. Imagine if he was just
If
like
he died.
another guy. Yeah.
If he died, what would have happened? That's a very good point to make. Like, what would have happened? Like, what would the world be like if he just died in that gas attack? Man, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean there are like really big questions. That's why I like movies and series that answer those big questions. Like for example, Men in the High Castle. What would happen if actually Germany won?
Oh, that was crazy. That was a good
Yeah,
show.
I mean technically, like what they pictured New York to be, it was insane. Like you see all the Concords flying nonstop, and everything is like, okay, this is pretty utopian. And then you see behind the curtains what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if you watched the entire thing.
I watched. I was in it for a couple seasons, and then I was kind of out of it. But overall,
I mean,
because
there
it
was
was,
this high German guy in the U.S. and he had a kid that had a disability, and
yeah, I know the
it was
story. And then
sentenced to be
he had
killed.
to kill his kid. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I mean that's fucked up. But then again, think about it. This is the evolution point.
That's
Okay,
true.
maybe not kill it because that's like a terminal point, but just I don't know, just forbid the multiplication and so on.
Yeah, I mean, that's so I think the thing that's super interesting is if what would we do? Because so back to my whole idea and perspective on foreign policy. So I think we should give aid. The problem is when I did my research, I found that we were giving aid and then somehow um, the aid was never getting to the people, and it would actually they would either use it for themselves, inflate their salaries or whatever costs, and then they would turn around and their defense part of their country, their military would buy from our defense contractors. So the money would actually turn around and come back to America and never actually reach people. So that's another crazy thing because you have the military industrial complex, which is a big conversation in and of itself. Because even was it Eisenhower? Eisenhower warned of the industrial complex, military industrial complex. Excuse me. And then so did Kennedy. Kennedy said he wanted to basically break apart the CIA because it was part of that whole thing. And it's just crazy, man. Because what would the world be like? Because that's kind of where my belief and philosophy kind of goes towards. What would the world be like if we didn't focus on things that caused a lot of the major disconnections or divides, like wars, political issues? Those two main things. What would we? Because when you talk to people, like just like us having conversations, I understand where you're coming from, and we're from different countries. This is important because now I can understand that you generally everybody has different beliefs, and that's fine. But generally, we want the same things. We want people to be able to live a good life, have the resources they need to further their education, to do what they want in life, and at least be exposed to enough to where they can choose what they want in the
I mean,
direction
at the
they
end of
go.
the day, that's what everyone wants, and
Exactly. Yeah.
what we have as a problem right now is a global one. The system is broken everywhere.
Exactly, which is why part of what I believe with my philosophy is I can see a world in which we are all together one nation because I think the reason why I think that it may people may disagree with me, but I am thinking a lot bigger than just the planet. If we take off from this planet and we go and we colonize Mars, Mars is not going to be the only planet that we colonize. There's going to be other planets, and then we get to a point to where we're going to meet other life eventually, right? So then we come to a
And
point
they're gonna
where,
wipe us out.
well, maybe not. Who knows? But who knows? Maybe the conspiracy theories are real, and there's who knows? Maybe there's because you have Operation High Jump. We had a fight with some sort of beings with flying saucer. You can look it up. Operation High Jump. There was a operation where it was supposed to be science based operation, but they had nothing but military soldiers, planes, and vehicles. And there was fights, people died, and there was people that talked about it. And then you have the Battle of
What I
Los
find
Angeles.
really weird is that all attempts to detonate an atomic bomb in
Have been
space
thwarted.
failed. Yep.
Yep.
That's weird as hell, and that's not only on the U.S. side.
There's a lot
The
of
Russians
stories.
tried as well.
You mean to detonate a nuke in space?
Yeah. They
Wow,
wanted
you
to
serious?
see yeah, they wanted to see how it works in a vacuum. And every time they launched a nuke, something happened, malfunction. The nuke was disabled, or it didn't even take off.
I've seen that too, and I've seen a lot of activity with UFOs around nuclear silos or just nuclear bases in general. So yeah, that's been the thing. There was also, you probably know this. Do you remember? I don't know if it was in the Cold War or not, but I know in the mid or late or early 1900s, there was this very big formation of UFOs that was flying across Russia, and then somebody was going to press the button, the big red button to, I guess, launch a nuke or whatever. But then they disappeared and they didn't press the button. I don't know, but that's the story. I'm probably getting it wrong, but there was it was in Russia.
I've never heard this one. The only story I've ever heard was about a bug in the system. That they had a bug that was signaling that the U.S. had fired nukes towards
I remember
Russia.
that one. Yeah, and they almost blew everybody up, but it was somebody who was like, no.
No, there was this guy that was like, no, this is a bug. I ain't press, and he was the only responsible one that could press the button.
Oh my God, he saved freaking millions of lives.
Yeah, I mean that's a crazy guy.
But that's the thing.
Imagine the nerves you have to know that potentially there are like 20 nukes flying your way, and you're the only one that can retaliate.
And you decide not to, and then what if those were real? That's a crazy decision, man. But that's kind of where I feel at the basis of who we are. If we can communicate, if we can be together, we will eventually get to a point where people just all want the same shit. They just want to live. They want to, make a family or not.
We need to evolve mentally. As long as you have greed, which is normal actually, and it's like comes from this self-conservance or whatever it's called instinct. That's greed. That's where it comes from. As long as we have that, it's not going to be possible.
Yeah, I think greed comes from it evolved from people having lack of, and they were afraid of having.
You will always have lack of compared to someone else.
True, yeah. But the one thing that also
then you reach the level of Bezos, and then you're thinking about totally other things like how what you have is still not enough for what you have in mind to do.
That's true. I just think that's the crazy thing to think about, because that dude has so much money, he can do whatever he wants. But what's crazy though is when you think of companies and this ever infinite pursuit of more money. Like there's a guy, Simon Sinek, and he wrote a book called the Finite Infinite Game, or the Infinite Finite Game, something like that. And he was talking about how, like, companies are always trying to push towards something that's just impossible. You're never actually going to, you're just, it's like sales. Sales is dumb. Sales is dumb because like one year you make like $100. The next year, they're like, okay, we want you to make more money. Okay, so we can make $150. We get to 1,000, 100,000. It's like, oh, last year you made 100,000. You should be able to double that or make more than that. You should be able to beat those goals. Because when I worked for Radio Shack and Sprint, that was kind of their thing. They were always talking about those things. Like, you made this much this year. At Radio Shack, they were huge on that. And I was like, you don't understand. I know this community better than you do. That's not the case. It always depends on what's happening, what's going on in the community, what's going on in the country, are all going to be factors that determine whether or not I'm actually going to have people that walk in the store and have opportunities. Because if I'm doing the same thing I do to every customer, which is, identify and provide solutions and then offer right? Which is kind of the basis of sales. You have to understand what their need is, provide a solution, and then try to offer them more things on top of that, which is fine. I mean, companies trying to make money, it's whatever. But when they're trying to push it to a point to where like you're forcing people to make sales numbers that are just impossible, not just impossible, but then you create an environment where people are like they're fucking things up. They're doing shit that's not real or not real, but they're doing stuff that's not ethical. They start to do things that just makes no sense. That you can't ethically reproduce that. So now you have these artificial realities that are created in these companies where they think that it's possible and it's not. They've been artificially inflated, and so that's why I think like
I've always said that the two types of people are going to screw up the entire thing. Those are economists and software developers.
Really?
Yeah. First of all, software developers, because they're creating something out of nothing. Then come the economists and ask real money for that something out of nothing. And this is screwing up the system at the end of the day.
That's true. That's the argument for like why some people prefer open source software versus like paid. I can hear you.
I mean, I do work in the software industry. I know where a lot of the money goes to. But then again, this is still something virtual. Well, tomorrow when we have a solar flare that fries all the electronics in the world, and you spend tens of thousands of dollars on software, what are you going to do with that software? Nothing, because it's fried alongside with your computer.
Yeah.
Unlike, for example, the old car that you bought, which doesn't have any electronics because it's a 40-year-old car, and you can still drive it. Or I don't know, or a bike or something physical that you can buy. It's still going to be there.
Yeah, and that's why I've made the argument with my wife, and when we have a family, that we want to get trained in how to use firearms. We want to get trained in how to use rifles properly, not just like, oh, this is how you shoot. Like, I want to know like how to hunt. I want to learn how to hunt. I want to learn how to hunt with a rifle. I want to learn how to hunt with a bow. And I want to learn the right way to camp. Like, I want to learn how to camp in areas where like you don't have everything, and you can learn how to live a little bit off the land. Not because I want to make a life doing that, but because I want to learn the skills. Like, I want to make sure my kids have skills that like it doesn't matter what scenario they're in, they're always going to be able to take care of themselves. You know what I mean? Like, if they're in a situation with friends, like you go travel, right? And if they're traveling, I want them to know it doesn't matter if you're in a different country. I want you to learn how to be able to get to a place where you can ask for help and discern, have the discernment to know, are these people nice people? Are they good people? Are they going to help me? Are they not? Is there something
here? Common sense, which is sadly not so common.
Yeah, that's true. But you know, the survival part, but also like if they have to use self-defense, like how they do that, and just so on and so forth, and like being able to speak for themselves and have a voice, which is super important. Those are the things. Because I mean, if society were to die, we would go back to trading and bartering. That's really what would happen. You know, that's the only thing that worked before we had this kind of monetary system. That's what would happen.
I mean, at the end of the day, the monetary system is the same.
True. You're just giving something for something.
A middle point for the skills or work you're trading. So, for example, I'm trading my skill to get money, which I will trade for something that someone else used his skill to create.
True. And
it's just cutting out that point that you have to find, for example, someone that makes bread that would be interesting in getting a service from a software tester.
Well, you know, and that's where, like, if we didn't have computers, I guess the conversation would be, you know, I want to get bread, so I'm going to go in town to get some supplies. So what do you trade for that? Like, sometimes people, like back in the day, they had coins, but how do you get coins, right? Like, I guess you just trade. Like, I guess, but that kind of, so back to the whole, my philosophy on my view of what humanity really should be. I've actually thought of like really cool aspects of, and there's already things that do this, right? Communities that do this, where they have community gardens, or, you know, you find ways to basically make a home self-sustainable, and you have areas where you're growing your own vegetables and fruits and whatever, or you just have a community where everybody kind of does that. Because I'm okay, and I know a lot of my views may kind of veer towards an area. Well, oh, you want everybody to have the same stuff. I'm like, I don't know. It's not that. Again, I don't have all the answers. But when because what sucks is why does it have to wait until a natural disaster for everybody to help each other out or be neighborly or be nice or whatever? You know what I mean? Because
That's only like I would say 10% of the people. Most people don't give a shit what's happening.
that's true. But I guess the question I would ask is
Like 10% genuinely feel for those people that are affected and want to help.
Yeah.
Another 20 or 30% are using the situation as a PR stunt.
Yeah.
And the rest just don't care.
Oh, can we talk about that freaking church that burned and how there was billions of dollars put into that, but the Amazon is burning and there's crickets? Can we talk about that?
Yeah, the Amazon, Australia was burning. Like
oh my
millions
God.
of animals were dying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you read about the other thing about a lot of the millionaires that pledged that they will give a couple of million for the restoration of the church, and they got like this tax deductions and so on before giving the money, and they never gave the money.
Oh my God, I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
That's crazy. But I do know the church got billions of dollars to get restored, and that scares me because you got the Catholic, you got the Pope talking about a sexual harassment issue with his what do they call them?
I mean, literally, the Vatican could have paid for the renovation themselves.
Yeah, they could have. They could also help out the Amazon, but they're not.
Yeah.
So that kind of tells you the real what is it? Not choices, but the real beliefs or the real agenda, so to speak, behind the Catholic Church. Because if they could do it, if they wanted to do it, they could. But here's a good question: what the hell do they have in the Vatican archives? That's a good question because from what I heard, they even have documents and scrolls and things from the Library of Alexander. And I would really love to learn what the hell was in the Library of Alexander. Like, was the truth of where we came from in there? Like, why was it burnt down? And who decided to burn that down? I just want to go to the afterlife and talk to that idiot. Like, you're an idiot. Like, knowledge is power. You could have confiscated all that and put it in your own library and say, this is mine, you know?
I mean, I can tell you it was actually a common tactic. Like, when you invade another country, it was a common tactic, and as far as I know, it was done by the Romans.
Yeah, but I guess I look at that.
I mean that was done by the Turkish when they invaded the Balkans. They've done the same. They set on fire books like Bibles and so on and so on. The only thing that kept things living was people telling that to the next generation.
I think it was still a dumb thing to do because they could have held on to it and absorbed the knowledge of that culture and bring it in, even if they were going to conquer them.
Maybe they did.
Who knows? Like I said,
I mean, they had like even back then in Roman times.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, who knows what was burnt and what was kept? What if they burned what people thought was burnt was actually just garbage stuff that people already knew and was already in the, who knows?
It was possible. That's something that the Nazis did as well. They burned a lot of art, but at the same time, they picked a lot of valuable art that was supposed to be burnt and brought it back home.
Yeah, I know, because all that stuff was tough, because there's a lot of people that, like, if they weren't Jewish, which regardless, everything that happened during World War II is atrocious and should have never happened, but the people that, because it's a very tough thing. It's like, become a part of our army, our military, or die. I don't know. Like if you have choice between providing for your family, because if you watch, it was the thing in the High Castle, because the guy used to be the military in the United States, but they're like, okay, they conquered us, so they're offering you places in their military, so you can have food. So you can have money.
That's pretty much what happened on the other side. Like, who founded NASA? It was Nazi scientists.
Exactly. Nobody knows that. And that's why, like, that's because that's when I look into stuff like that, that's where like conspiracy theories are bullshit. I don't think it's conspiracy theories. I think it's the truth because you have Victor von Braun, uh, like that dude on his deathbed and his dying like words was saying that it was all a sham and they're going to do terrorists and then after that it's going to be an alien invasion. The reason why I have belief behind that, and this is where I kind of go into it, I dig into all the crappy conspiracy theories, but I try to pick the threads that make sense, right? So the CIA, they decommission a lot of documents. You can go on the CIA website and you'll see they have a lot of crap with the MK Ultra.
I try to stay out of their radar. Not a big fan.
Sure, but like like I have a book on ESP. Like there's a guy that worked for the CIA and he did research into it, and it's proven. There's physicists that actually can there's proven science behind ESP. It's crazy, and it's called remote viewing. If you ever thought about it or looked at it or whatever, and there's people that do that, and it's crazy stuff. But with conspiracies like with the NASA, like photos being photo brushed, you have people who are doing that. And then when they got out of their contract, they don't have an NDA anymore. They're like, yeah, I used to do that. I used to like just grab a photo and there'd be a UFO or whatever, and I had to brush it out.
For me, what's the most logical explanation is disinformation. Like they're planting this conspiracy theories about crazy stuff like aliens and so on and so on. Because they know they're going to get picked up quite easily. They're sounding incredible. And then again, they're covering up something more realistic that's even worse, like selling cocaine to fund some black ops and so on.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you've probably seen Narcos.
The show?
Yeah.
I've heard of it. I haven't watched it, but I know. But I understand. I understand
like
the concept.
The entire.
I understand the concept
of the Colombian cartels and the Mexican cartels. There is always a guy from CIA there.
Yeah, well, because like so what I understand is when the concept of the deep state, right? What people call the deep state is basically a military industrial complex of. They have their own funding, and the funding is through those types of industries where they use drugs,
that's
sex
the
trafficking.
reason why they are still illegal, because they need something off the books.
Yeah.
If you legalize it, you can't do that anymore. Then it would be something else, like selling organs or something, which is a bit harder to hide when you kill people or harvest their organs or something.
Yeah, and that's nuts because I've seen movies about that too.
Yeah, I mean I can only say that when I was a kid, I had always in my mind this American dream and so on, and always wanted to go to the States. And the older I get, the more I want to stay away from the States. It's pretty fucked up.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah.
No. I'm not. That was like a curiosity, like a curious, like really. So what made you not want to? That's a good question.
I mean, first of all, it's a huge ass country. You have no idea where you're gonna find a psycho that's just gonna kill you, because I mean there are a lot of places that are so remote that no one's gonna hear you. Like I've seen plenty of movies that, when you think about it, it could be possibly real. Like I've read also like real stories about cannibals living in the woods and so on.
So with that, you're gonna get that anywhere that has a lot of remote.
But I mean in Europe it's a bit more like cozy. There is not a lot of room between cities.
Yeah. You're right. America does have a lot of open runs, not open runs, open areas. My wife never.
One thing. Then you have the politics part of the States.
That's true.
That's an endless topic.
Yeah.
And again, you could be just doing your job and accidentally just bump into something that you shouldn't have, and you just disappear.
Well, there's that. I haven't heard many stories about that, but what do you mean by that?
I mean by that I have friends working for for like Google and Facebook and so on, and they stay away from social media. They don't even have accounts.
The people that work for Google and Facebook.
Yeah, they don't use phones. They don't use anything.
Are you serious?
Yep.
Why?
I don't know. I mean, they say it's like their choice. They just don't want to. But I'm pretty sure there's something more deep into it, judging by the fact how I handle cars since being in the automotive industry. It's like people ask me, why did you buy this car? And it's like, I cannot really say why I bought this car and I didn't buy the other one. But I at the end of the day, I just say, okay, I bought it because I like it.
Yeah.
Or just personal preferences.
That's true. That's true. But we're getting to about 3 hours, and my goal was to kind of have it around there. I know Joe Rogan does 3 hours too. It was kind of that, but it just seems like a sweet point. But anytime there's really good conversation,
I've ever done.
Yeah, I mean, anytime there's really good conversation, it just keeps flowing. I mean, I don't care to go over, but it seems like a good point to wrap up. But so one thing I wanted to do, because this is a lot of great conversation, a lot of good perspectives. I know I don't have a lot of knowledge about a lot of things that we were discussing, but I have a lot of opinions and a lot of perspectives, like the philosophy that I view on just the world. Like, we touched on a lot of things that were kind of subtly mentioning a lot of things that I actually just believe would be a good idea. Like, these are dreams or cool ideas. Are they really like, does it make sense in our reality? Maybe not. But I mean, you see small things happening in small areas and it works just fine. Like the community gardens, and things like that. Like, cause I think and I'll tell myself to keep this short, but like the COVID stuff, like there's so much impacted that we've relied so much on not just the government, but I feel like it really shows and it helps, aside from, because obviously people have passed away and that's terrible. And I wish it never happened, but it has. But it also helps us understand with what's going on is our reliance on, oh no, jobs are gone. Now we can't provide for ourselves.
I just want to say something. I mean, it might trigger a lot of the people that are going to listen to this podcast.
Sure.
But how many people died on 9/11? A couple of hundred, right?
A couple thousand, yeah.
Okay, a couple of thousand still. How many years after that people are still talking about 9/11? And this was done by people.
Yeah.
Yeah. We already have 1 million people died from COVID-19. And most of it is done because people are dumbasses. So it's inflicted by people because they wouldn't stay home. They would travel. They wouldn't wear masks because it hurts their fucking ears.
Yeah. Well, so, that's dumb.
If we can talk to almost, I don't know how many years now, 20 years, about 9/11 and make it a big deal, we could talk about the deaths from COVID and no, Karen, you should wear your fucking mask.
Well, I think what's dumb with that is, like, if people have a problem with the mask, they can obviously buy a different one. That's dumb. If people are mad because, like, oh, it hurts my face, like, okay, then because I have a mask and it has elastic, but it's more comfortable, and I wear it. I don't care to wear it. It doesn't bother me.
I don't know if I have mine over here. Just a second. I want to show you. Like, there are even designer solutions now.
Yeah. Well, because I think LG came out with one too. LG made one, and it's like super nice and slick because these bigger companies are coming out with them now too. Oh, Adidas? Adidas has one?
Yep, just a second. So this is made directly from sports material. So it definitely doesn't let things go through.
Right.
But still, at the same time, it doesn't heat you up.
That's interesting because I did notice that on mine. So this is another conversation that, like, kind of annoys me, is how, so there's a couple things. The governments aren't expressing on basic stuff, just basic shit, right? Like,
because they don't know it. This is actually the first time they keep quiet when they don't know something.
No, no, true, but that's my problem. I think they should at least be honest if they don't know something, because that's just the reality. Like we're not going to know everything. You have to understand this. Like this is an ongoing process. We're going to use a scientific method and we're going to learn as we go. But what we can tell you is eat healthy, right? Exercise, right? And sugar. Stop that shit. Like I'm a I'm obviously I love my sugary shit too. I don't eat it all the time.
Regarding the exercise,
What's up?
there is also a lot of misinformation there because there were at the beginning when they started like relaxing a little bit the lockdown and so on. They said, okay, you can go for a run, you can go biking or something like that.
Yeah.
But then after a research in the Netherlands, they found out that actually when you go biking, instead of the 1.5 meters that you have to keep between people, you need to keep 20 meters apart because you're spreading germs so far back.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and this information never reached out to the mass public. And this was done by the university that my best man goes to and used to be there to teach.
Yeah.
And this didn't reach a lot of people.
That's crazy. But that's the thing too, which is why I think it's more important to have like panels of people that actually are experts, right? So you have opposing opinions, but you
What
have
does an
enough.
expert mean? I mean, I can tell you that I know engineers
Good
that are
question.
total idiots.
Yeah, it's a good question. Listen,
Network
I
experts
don't
and
have
so
no, you bring up, this is why I like having these conversations, because it doesn't mean that I have to believe what you believe or see things the way you see things, but we can have these conversations. It's important. But like I think still that
I mean, I just have the professional deformation that I should find the flaw in something. Like when you work in testing, you're not just checking if it works
no,
correctly.
I mean that makes a good conversation, right?
If the logic behind it is,
Yeah.
I mean, you can get the right result, but the logic could be bad. For example, how you reach there.
That's why I think it was important that like they should be honest. Like my biggest thing that I tell people is like I wish more people would admit that they were wrong, because that solves a lot of problems. You admit when you're wrong, it doesn't
Extra
matter. Like
mentality and the ego.
no, I know, but I think if people were admit like they were wrong, but not just wrong, but like just be honest about the situation. So when COVID happened, if they focused more on like a panel across the country, like a panel of doctors, because on YouTube, this drove me nuts. YouTube, doctors were being suppressed. How the hell? That doesn't make any sense. They are literally doctors, people who are discussing like possible things that you could do, right? And they're not like prescribing you. They're just saying like, look, you could obviously use vitamin D supplements. That's true. You could eat healthy. That's true. And you could exercise. Now, exercise, like you mentioned, there's things that I didn't know. I didn't know that. There was no
Yeah,
like.
but
That's
I
so
mean
crazy.
that again, that's we're getting back to the point about common sense that it's not so common.
Well, no, but there's also a problem that I argue with people, and what I mean, like, what I get irritated is when people assume people should know things, and I get annoyed about that. I'm like, you literally, everybody comes from a different background. Nobody's going to know what they don't know. You know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. And that's just the fact. And you don't know unless somebody's going to give you an opportunity to learn. But when people put people down or judge them or whatever's going on Twitter because people don't know, that's the problem. But that's why I think it's important that people should be able to have their opinions
Actually,
changed.
that's not a problem for me. That's exactly what we're getting back to the evolution point
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
What is the thing that made us evolve and to become the top species on the planet? It's our mind
Yeah.
and the knowledge and the ability to gather knowledge and learn the things that are like going to make our lives better to help us survive and so on. If a person cannot have something, cannot figure out something that's usually common knowledge and so on, that's just evolution playing there.
That's true.
It's like this quote from it's a lot in gifts. If he dies, he dies.
Yeah.
I don't know if.
Well, I mean, it's a good quote. I don't know. It doesn't matter who it's from. It's a good quote. If he dies, he dies. But I think with the COVID stuff, they could have at least talked about the things that are pretty basic. But that does go into a lot of different conversations. For example, the food pyramid is garbage, and all that. I mean, I get it, but I think on a basis like people could have home gyms. There's exercise. There's simple exercises they can do in their homes. And people have treadmills. If you don't have one, people would suggest, hey, buy one
Yes,
or whatever.
and no. For example, on the other side of the planet, that's not possible. My apartment is the size of a normal American living room, and
Oh,
this is still bigger than, for example, Asian apartments.
that's true. No, you make a point. In certain areas, it doesn't make sense because there's no space for it.
For example, I have an attic space where I'm currently building my own gym there. Like by gym, don't expect much. There is a machine for cardio going. There's going to be a machine for cardio as well as a bench press, nothing more.
In your attic?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, an apartment building, and we have like this compartments on the attic for the different apartments, and I can fit that in mine.
Oh, cool. So normally, like in America, it's like we don't have. Well, depends on the house whether it has a big enough attic or not. But most of the time, people put that stuff in their basement.
Yeah, we do have a basement, but I'm living on the top floor, so the attic is more close.
Gotcha. But yeah, I mean, we can keep on this stuff for hours. But like, so one thing I wanted to offer is at the end of the podcast, people can just give their offering, product, or whatever. So do you have a course? Do you have like whatever you want? Like you want to tell people about your YouTube channel? You want to tell people about whatever you want? Go ahead.
I mean, they can find me on social media. I basically have every single social media account possible, Martin Ivanov or Marto Ivanov 91. And yeah, I can only say at the end, just something that's driven me to go for is always look for the flaws and try to fix them.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think it's important. One thing that I try to do is I try to just take things apart to try to look at each individual piece and try to understand those pieces. And I think it's important for people to do that to an extent, but also like admitting that they're wrong. Like I think a lot of people could learn a lot because when you do that, especially in marriage, right? Are you married?
Oh yeah.
That's right. That's right.
That's inevitable.
Yeah. So
I mean, basically, as a man in a marriage, I'm always wrong. I have to accept that.
Well, but to admit you're wrong, but then admit it, but also know you have a problem. To admit you have a problem, and to admit there's an issue, and that there's something that you can do. Right? For me, it's like, okay, I know that I have that problem. And admit if I'm wrong, and then apologize, but then work to get a better solution, especially in marriage, is communication. So, but yeah, I mean, we can go deep in that conversation. We can definitely have another podcast. I'm down to talk to you again because this was super fun.
Yeah, I'm also down, and I'm also honored that I was invited for the first episode.
Well, and let's remind everybody that this was the first episode of this podcast of I believe I'm going to call it the Frank Experience, and it may change, but for right now, that seems like that's going to be a good name for it. I know people go, you're stealing that from Joe Rogan. I'm like, I mean, it's a good name, man. So, but anyways, and it just allows me to kind of gesture to we're just talking and we're having good conversation, but also this podcast is happening on a cool day that I didn't know about until you told me. It's how many years ago did the Berlin Wall come down?
I think it was 30 years ago.
You gotta Google it.
Yeah. 31. Yeah. Okay,
but anyways,
Berlin Wall was on November 9th. Okay, but today is the reunification day of Germany, the official joining of the two Germanys.
Gotcha. But hey, that's cool. I didn't know it, and you let me know about it, so that's pretty awesome.
Which was the next year after the Berlin Wall fell, so it took a while to make it.
So this is just the unification day, not the date the wall fell?
Yeah. So the wall fell in November '89, and the reunification was finalized on October 3rd, 1990.
That's really cool. Well, the unification.
But it's still a symbol for me about opening east to the west and so on.
Still an awesome day, but it's really cool because the first podcast and all that. But yeah, like I said, there'll be more. I'm gonna try to do it every Saturday, and I'm already scheduling the next one. Next week we're gonna be out of town, so the following week I already have one scheduled, and I'm just gonna keep going and try to get more. And if I have to pull you in for another episode, we'll do it. But it was a good conversation because there was a ton of stuff that popped up, and we'll talk more. But anyways, guys, y'all have a good one. Then we'll see you next time.
Yeah, bye from me as well.
Let me stop that recording. Man, that was good.